Looks like it registers my mic this time. We might really be live. I don't know. Okay. It looks like it's registered. Let's try to pull up something to fucking listen to whilst I'm moving to glass. I still like the room with the talk. I wish we could listen to music. I couldn't find my power cord for the computer, so we're back on YouTube. It's probably in the storage. Oh, I see we're live. I'm watching. Let's see. Easy now. What do I do? All right, let's listen to Graham rattle on. Fin- Fingerprint to the gods. Yeah, we get to listen to his voice. How you doing, 559? We're at 888 on the kiln and climbing. Looks like we got the microphone working. It's actually responding. Last time, I don't know, sometimes it doesn't connect the chat. I have to reset everything. Hey, I know a guy like that. How you doing, my friend? I haven't talked to you in a while. Glad to see you. I was wondering who was 559. I'm like, I know that area code. uh, okay. You got pen and paper? I don't know how to get a link on this thing. You got me on Facebook, though. Alright. Tell you what. You got that? So fix and remove. Yeah, you think, Adam? How you doing? Here comes the next ones.
not even a hint or a breath of air, nor is there any shade to be had. In 2014, a roof will be erected to cover and protect the site, but in 2013, only its foundations are in
I,
place. So we're standing exposed on a makeshift
I don't have anywhere to grow.
down to a series of
Hell, I
semi-subterranean
hardly have anywhere to walk at this point in time. Good
like
God.
dozens of giant
I appreciate it. Well,
his team to the
did you get that,
Geological
Robert?
Institute in autumn 1980. Before they began their work, the place had the appearance of a rounded hill. In fact, Göbekli Tepe means hill of the navel, sometimes also translated as
If y'all couldn't tell, that's a friend of
the
mine.
excavations have removed most of that original profile. Of course, we cannot say that Göbekli Tepe
Saw the
is
559 got suspicious.
mentioned. Please choose his words with care. Let us call it a hill sanctuary. And I do not claim that it is rewriting
Okay.
history. Rather, I would say that it is adding an important chapter to existing history. We thought that the transition from hunter-gatherers to farmers was a slow, step-by-step process. But now we realize that it was a period when exciting monuments that we didn't expect were made. And not just
It's all good,
monuments
bro.
up front. At the beginning, the local people were hunter-gatherers, and there was no sign of agriculture. No, Schmidt concedes, none. He gestures expansively at the circles of pillars. But the people who came to Göbekli Tepe and who did all this work invented agriculture. So we see a connection between what happened here and the later emergence of Neolithic societies dependent on farming. My ears prick up at that word invented.
Growing is a little bit of work. If you look at it like I love playing with the plants personally. That's why I grow.
Yes, yes. Could you elaborate? Because in this region, we have the early domesticates of both animals and plants. It's done in this region, so they are the same people. As far as you are concerned, this is the first, the oldest agriculture in the world. First in the world, yes.
I'm not so sure when I'm gonna
Becoming impatient
have a actual place again.
the areas of Göbekli
Actually,
Tepe that have
will
been excavated so far are close to
work.
12,000 years old, which makes them, according to Orthodox
Awesome.
more than 6,000 years older than any other
We're
volcanic sites
hey
anywhere.
cat. We're
Certainly,
kind of
Geotinia and Nidra in Malta,
like
Stonehenge
in an
in
RV
Ethiopia,
by
and
choice.
pyramids of Giza in Egypt. Yet
Plan
those
on
sites
traveling
all belong to that phase of the
around and
evolution of human civilization,
spreading some
the
knowledge
archaeologists
outside of
call
YouTube.
Neolithic, New Stonehenge.
Another long day. Well,
Agriculture and the
welcome home,
urbanization
cat.
of society are being structured
Welcome to the
one
corner.
over the wire.
We're listening to the
Breaking
Graham
down the
Hancock
walls,
today.
permitting the
He's
emergence of
doing his
civilizations
fingerprints of the
that had no
gods.
need to produce their own food because they could be supported from the surpluses generated by farmers.
Well,
Göbekli
thank you
Tepe
very much. I know I've seen you
belongs to the
around
very end of
quite
the
a bit.
Neolithic, oldest Stonehenge, when our ancestors are supposed to have
Yeah,
been the
I
many
don't know.
hunting
I don't
outfits,
know. That might
living in
be a few
small,
years.
mobile bands and
We
incapable
may
of
be losing
transitioning
electric
from
here in
one
the next
another.
month.
Agriculture lay
The world's
behind
still
them.
kind of on fire.
Schmidt and I are standing at a point on the waterway that overlooks both Enclosure C and Enclosure D,
I didn't
where I
really
learned from
want
my
to
background
save the
research of the
place. I
intriguing
was kind of intent on
I intend to ask
doing
the
this
archaeologist permission to
for
climb down into
humanity,
Enclosure D so that I can
actually.
take a closer look at this image. But I want to get his views about the origins of agriculture
Yeah,
and its
yeah,
relationship
it
to
is.
Neolithic
I
society.
was listening to it this morning. I've heard of it a
Enclosure
long
C,
time ago,
the
but I
largest
haven't
of the
listened
four
to it in a
main
while.
pits so far excavated,
It's a
is
long one.
dominated by two huge central pillars, both of which are broken. In their original state, they would have each been more than 6 meters, that's about 20 feet high, and weighed around 20 tons. Inset into the wall around them stand a dozen other pillars, slightly
Spokane.
smaller but
I
still
know where that
enormous.
is. It
The
gets
same
cold
goes for
here.
enclosure D.
It
Again, a ring of smaller pillars surrounding two towering
gets
structures,
cold in
in
Spokane.
this case, both intact. Their T-shaped
I
tops bend
I
slightly down to the front, and
was
lift
up
each,
in like
but
Port
are
Orchard
nonetheless
and
eerily reminiscent of giant
Bremerton.
volcanoes, an impression that is reinforced by the faint outlines of
Okay,
particles
awesome.
drift at the
I got your
edge,
number,
running
Robert.
down the flanks and layout of the site. To be
Thank you.
honest, it looks to be as big a project as a place like Stonehenge in England. Yet Stonehenge is much younger. So how
Thank
did we
you. I
get here?
got it.
I think
I don't know
fit
if
in with
you
your
saw
notion
that.
of
My
hunter-gatherer
connection went unstable
It's
for a
much more
second.
organized than we expected, Schmidt argues. What we can see
Yeah, it does. I think it's
hunter-gatherers
cold as fuck
see a
here.
division of labor.
You think I'm heading south for it?
Humans
I'm
as
heading
species
into Arizona. It's
we were
winter
also
time,
able to transport
baby.
directly
I want to
using
get down there
instruments
to
much
Winter Rock.
lower
It ain't quite as cold
and
down
again
there,
we didn't expect
but
it
I ain't
to
worried
be
about it no more. I got my heater.
stark
We got a generator.
it's
Uh,
unconventional and
I can run the
monumentous.
kiln and the road
So if
all
I
over the
understand you
place. I know
correctly,
a place called Kelly
you're saying
Canyon that ain't
this
nobody
level of approach to a global
coming
warming
around for days. You'll be blowing
and
glass right
agriculture will
outside the
benefit.
RV with a little awning
Yes,
up.
that's right. And
I
yet
think
we
we
don't
might get
see anything
signal out there.
really
Maybe.
revolutionary.
We'll see.
We see
I
it
try
as
to
a
park the
process
places
which
we
we
get
expect
signal so we can do the
from the
live
existing
flow
mountain
and
history
hopefully
or from
Twitch,
pre-existing
man.
history. But this process is much more exciting than we expected, especially since what we have here at Göbekli Tepe belongs more to the world of the hunter-gatherers than to the farming societies. It's towards the end of the hunter-gatherers, but not yet the beginning of the Neolithic. It's a time of transition then, a cusp moment, and maybe more than that.
Not yet.
What I'm
I'll tell
getting
you,
from the
Arizona's
research and
nice.
from what you've
I
shown
like
me since
Phoenix. I like
small
Tempe.
is the notion that Göbekli Tepe
They're
was
good
built
markets for
some
me.
sort of
I
thinking
go down there and make
center
money
of
all over the
innovation
goddamn place. I
perhaps
work
under the
every day.
control of some sort of resident
So
elite who will
I'm
claim
heading
power.
that way and
Yes, yes, it was
see
a
what's
place where
up down there. I haven't been there in a few years.
people were gathering here, and it was undoubtedly a platform for the distribution of knowledge and innovation, including knowledge of large-scale
Oh, we're
stone
only gonna be
and
here a few
manufacturing.
more days though.
Would you
Well,
dare to describe those who
I
controlled the
intend to
site
head
and
west here
disseminated
real
these
soon.
ideas as a sort of priesthood?
Head out towards the Four
Whoever they were,
Corners out
they
there in
certainly were not
Colorado,
practicing simple shamanism. They were a bit
and then
more
we're
than
heading
an
south
institution.
from there
So
to
yes, they were the
Mexico and
growth of
Arizona.
a priesthood. And since Göbekli Tepe was in unbroken use for well over 1,000 years, would this be one continuous culture with its own institutions, with the same ideas and the same priesthood who continue to manage the site throughout the whole
It's
period?
hand crocheted. I got it for
Yes.
$2
But the strange thing
at,
is, there was a
at
clear
the
collapse
thrift
in the
store.
emperor's reign as the centuries went on. The truly monumental
And some
structures
lady had made them
are
and
in
was
the
selling
older
them right
layers.
there
In the younger layers, they get smaller,
at Global
and there's a
Thrift
significant decline in quality.
in La
So
Junta.
the oldest is the best. Yes, the oldest is the best. And you don't find that these
Nice,
days.
Will.
Klaus Schmidt looks almost apologetic.
I like
Well,
beautiful flowers.
eventually we will discover the truth,
Who doesn't?
and that there we will see the small beginnings that we expect but haven't yet found. Then we have this monumental thing,
Well,
and
I'm in
eventually we will
semi-legal
get to the truth.
states.
It occurs
Most
to
of the
me that
places I
Cook was the
go,
operative word
most of
for
them are
this change
medical, and
to
there's no
simple.
dispute. I
The
need
ideas of
medical.
things starting out small and simple, progressing, evolving, to become more complex and sophisticated. So this is naturally what we expect to find on our approach to the sites. It upsets our carefully structured ideas of how civilizations
You
should
making
function,
my mouth water.
how they should mature and develop under a
Did you see my
compartmentalized
big old
vision
sack
of
I
time.
got from Glenn
The start
while he
seems
was
like
here?
nothing at the beginning,
That
and then
was,
we will dig deeper
God, that was a hell of a
until
weed
it
deal.
is just a pale shadow of civilization. Nor is it so much the process of evolution that we object to. We know that civilizations can decay. Just look at the Roman Empire or the British Empire.
Yeah, I'm not
No,
real confident
what we
about
have at
getting that shit
Göbekli
in the mail
Tepe is
either.
the pristine, sudden appearance like
That's some,
Athena springing
that's some
full-blown,
questionable shit.
fully armed from the brow of Zeus, of
Oh,
what
damn.
appears to be an
I
already
had a
seasoned
lighter
civilization
at some
so
point.
accomplished that it
I may have to
invents both
go.
agriculture and monumental architecture at the apparent moment
I
of
may
its
have to
birth.
go get another.
It
What the
is
fuck did I do with
because
the
of
lighter?
that, and it can explain why the earliest monuments of art, sculpture, mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and architecture of ancient Egypt are perfect at the beginning, without any traces of evolution from simple to sophisticated. And we might well ask Göbekli Tepe, as my friend John Anthony West asks
Ah,
Egypt,
there it is. It's
how
in my
does a
pocket.
complex civilization spring full-blown from being
9:37. We're getting up there.
and compare it to the Maya? There's no mistake in the process of development. Within Egypt, there are no parallels. Everything is right there at the start. The answer to the mystery is, of
We'll
course,
do something with this today.
because it is referred to the prevailing cast
I
of
was showing off
it's
this
seldom considered. Egyptian
planetary
civilization was not
marble here.
and it was a legacy. Could this be the
A couple
case?
of orbitals in the sun.
Klaus Schmidt has no time is the lost civilization that was the progenitor of all later known civilizations. So what I can that most of
The triple went well. It's sitting in there. I'll have to go retrieve that too when I get me some water. I thought Polly was coming out here to grab this, but she went to the store.
He could be right. One of the stunning things about the Göbekli Tepe, which had already been the subject of 18 years of continuous excavation, Klaus Schmidt showed me round the site in 2013, is that so much of it still remains underground. But how much? It's hard to say, Schmidt tells me. We've done a geophysical survey, ground penetrating radar, and from this we can see that at least 16 further large enclosures remain to be excavated. Large enclosures, how? I pointed to towering megaliths of enclosure D. Like this one? Yes, like this one. And 16 is the minimum. In some areas, our geophysical mapping didn't give us complete results, and we can't really see inside.
Yeah, I don't know how because I can't operate
Maybe
this
in
thing.
reality it will
I
turn
can't copy email. I can't click on. Yeah, I don't. This is a not a computer I'm on. It's a stupid. It's a
each
Chromebook.
enclosure with 14
It ain't got right click.
But you know, it's not archaeological
I'm
excavation.
on it. What the fuck do I
Just a
do?
little bit. Because
Uh,
excavation is destruction.
I'm doing good
Most of
just
us
to get on here as a
believe
guest and use the
it
damn thing.
dilates the
I
imagination
can't even
to
sign
reflect
into it.
on
I
the
think it's
scale of
locked
the
me
work
out.
that is undertaken at the Göbekli Tepe for ancients. Not
So
only are the circles of megalithic
yeah,
pillars already
I'm pretty
excavated at
inept
least
at the moment.
6,000 years old
I need to get
than
my
any other
laptop
known
working.
megalithic sites anywhere in the world.
Be
But also,
patient with me. I'm
Göbekli
dialing
Tepe
in the
is the
RV and
key,
everything else.
occupying an area
I've
that
been
eventually
busy.
proved is
I'll
more
get
than
a
30
computer.
times larger
That's not my
than the
big
fullest
priority.
extent of
And
the
especially we
southern
got the
Soviet
phone. I can
empires.
do the lives from that.
We
But
are confronted
yeah,
with
I've got
another
a.
evidence of
You know what's funny? I could probably copy it from the phone.
immense scale.
This thing here is just.
Outflow and
I don't know how to
underflow.
copy paste off of
Noteworthy is
it. I don't
background
know how to
mineralization
operate the thing.
shrouding
That's
catastrophe
why I
issues.
folded it up and it ain't been used.
The enclosure of Younger Dryas. I'm used to archaeologists making the sign of the evil eye and turning their
I
attention to
have
its
the
shadow
power cord that goes with that thing, and we're heading down towards La Junta. Seamus wants to see his friends, and me and Polly need to go
amidst the
through that
limelight of the Caucasus
storage
Empire
bin,
to climb
figure out what
down
that.
into
I
the
don't know. I think she
underground
wants to
floor.
keep it another
All
month or
four of the
something.
main
I
enclosures so
don't know
far
what she's
excavated
doing.
at Göbekli Tepe are strictly
She had
operational
something in mind this
and
morning.
under the eye of watchful guards. But there's an image on one of the pillars in enclosure D that
I'm
many
just
call
heading that way
Schmidt's
because I want to
walkway
head out to
or
50.
walkway of fools.
Anyways,
Indeed, I can't even see it from here, so Schmidt's generosity of spirit was welcome. We enter the enclosure
and I like it
overlooking
out that way. It's nice and quiet.
unexcavated 2 meter high partition of rubble and earth separating the two main central pillars, one to the east and the other to the west. Quarried from the very hard crystalline limestone of the region, polished to a flawlessly smooth finish, these colossal pillars
Oh
hold
God.
many gold in the soil. I know from Professor Schmidt that they are
Eh,
about 5.5 meters, that's 18
um,
feet tall,
patience will.
and that each of them weighs more than 15
I've got a
tons.
big
Scrambling down
bag of
onto the
weed.
floor of the enclosure, I note that
I'm
they stand
good.
on
I'm
stone
good
plinths,
for the
about
moment.
20
We're
centimeters
good.
or 8 inches high,
Um,
and have been carved directly
I
out
think
of the
Polly
Göbekli
just went
Tepe.
and got some.
In a
I'm not
row
sure.
along the front
She doesn't
edge of
like
the
Glenn's weed.
overlapping eastern pillar,
I don't know why.
squatting back on
She's
their tails
smoked.
between the
I
wings,
thanks, Glenn.
7
I get high
solitary
as fuck off
Göbekli
that shit.
Tepees have been sculpted with their stylized
Just for the
anthropomorphic
record.
appearance encased by majestic cone-shaped heads. The central pillars loom over me like twin giants. Though they're not my primary target, I seize the opportunity to examine them closely. Their
So it
front
looks like I'm
edges,
smoking a
representing
big
their
bag of weed
chests
by
and elbows,
myself.
are quite slim, only about 20
I don't
centimeters
know.
wide, while their flanks measure a bit over
Oh,
1 meter,
it's
about 4
keefy.
feet from front to back. Both figures, as I've noticed from the walkway, have arms carved in low relief at their sides, crooked at the elbows, and terminating in hands with long,
I like some
fingers.
really good
These
flavorful
fingers wrap
buds,
around the
but you
frontal
know, if I
cortex,
got a big
almost
bag of
immediately.
stony weed, I'm gonna smoke
Above
the
their
fuck out of
hands,
that
covering
first
their chests,
before I go
are hints of an open frontal guard.
getting a bunch of new
Just
buds.
below the hands, both figures also wear a broad belt,
Especially if I
ornamented with
plan on
emeralds,
crossing borders
decorated
anytime
with a
soon.
distinctive buckle. In both cases, what appears to be
So I got a lot of weed to
boundless
smoke.
caught by short that present hind legs and tail is shown hanging suspended from the body so that it covers the genital region.
I can
Both
think
figures
of
also
plenty of
wear necklaces.
places to smoke it.
In the
Sound
case of
good.
the eastern figure, the necklace is decorated with crowns of gold, and in the case of the western figure, the
Well,
wings.
I know we're not going to be
In
doing
addition,
it Monday.
both pillars
You're
stand
crossing
on
borders, are
foundations
you?
of exactly the same material.
That's pretty tough to
They are
do.
not secure
So
affairs,
you're
as
crossing
the
over the
materials
ocean
have
a
been
wee bit, are
smoked
you?
less than 10 centimeters, about 4 inches deep.
Hmm.
Klaus Schmidt and his team have stabilized them with props, but I can only imagine that they must also have been held upright in a similar way in antiquity, unless perhaps it's like the Geological in Portugal, into which the heads of
Yeah, the borders we cross out here can be.
clearly marked as the
You're going to
correct
Portugal.
position
Oh, well, yeah.
of large necklace.
Nice.
Mysterious that they chose not to
So you're
adapt
going
the
across the
position
pond
which the pillars
just a little bit.
There must have been some purpose to this, but I can't fathom it. So much for the similarities
Tell
between
them,
the two
you know,
civilizations, but
tell
there are
them the
also
cats I said
differences.
hi.
For example,
The
the
papal
eastern figure has
peoples.
an almost life-size painting of a fox carved in high relief on its right flank so that it appears to be leaping forward from the crook of its elbow. And whereas the belt of the western
I
pillar
used to
bears
take care of
ornaments
an old
of
Portuguese
Roman
lady.
stucco, the belt of the
She
eastern
was
pillar bears a number of
she was
intriguing
very
ornaments,
racist.
including a series of
So watch
glyphs
your
like
back.
the Roman letter C and others like the Roman letter H. As I study them, I reflect that we cannot possibly know what these symbols meant to the people of Göbekli Tepe, from whom we are separated by a vast span of more than 11,000 years.
I won't
It is
mention her name.
far-fetched to imagine that they
But
had
she's no
even
longer with
writing,
us.
let alone writing in the alphabet we use today. Nonetheless, there's something strangely modern and
You can't
perhaps
smoke during the
alien
daytime. That
about the
sucks.
beads that are displayed.
How you doing,
It
Amber?
seems to me that they are more than mere decorative. Nothing else like them exists anywhere in the world of Paleolithic art. The same is true of the animal and bird figures, and this merely
Always
proves
go
that
to the
such
same
a
place.
combination of
That's a good bet.
neatness and sophisticated
Yeah, I bet
sculpture
it's nice.
is
I
utterly
bet it is.
unprecedented.
And I have some friends from
We
Spain.
move on
Pretty
towards a
close.
dozen pillars dispersed around the edges of enclosure D, which forms more of an ellipse than a straight circle,
And
measuring
this lady was
12
completely
meters in
aged and out of her
6.5 meters
fucking
across,
mind. Anyway,
and just over 14 meters,
she
46 feet, from north to south.
she was
The
a character.
surrounding pillars are generally
That's
about
why I
half the
was
length
there
of the central
to
pillar, and for the most
buffer
part
the
do not
rest of the world
freestand,
from her,
but rather are embedded into the enclosure wall.
or vice versa.
Most, though not all, are T-shaped, and most are richly decorated with images of birds, insects, and animals, as though the cargo of Noah's Ark has been turned to stone. Foxes,
Oh,
gazelles, wild boars, numerous species of birds, including several cranes with serpents at their feet, many more serpents, both individually and in groups, a spider, a wild ass, wild cattle, a lion with its tail curving forward over its spine, and many more. Making the most of our laissez-passer, they take my time, and eventually on the northwestern side of the enclosure, I come to the pillar to
I just try not to
introduce
let the
myself.
world get to me
For
too
ease of
much.
reference, Schmidt and
I
his
always like
colleagues
to
have
stay a
named
little
the
bit
pillar after
relaxed.
my pillar, and this is pillar number 43. I know from my prior research that it has a large depiction of a
That's
snake
good. You taking the
floating
boat?
beneath
I'd
its
stay on the
base.
ground too.
Some have suggested it might be an image of Younger
I
Dryas,
got better chance of walking on
its
water
sculptor
than I
in
got
clay.
with flying.
However, to my
I
great
just
disappointment, the figure is no longer visible. The
I'm not
archaeologists
a
have
big fan
currently
of
uncovered
heights.
it to protect it from damage Schmidt claims. I tell him of my interest in a possible astronomical connection, but he scoffs at this. There are no astronomical figures here. Zodiac constellations were not recognized until
Yeah,
as
I'd take a
early
boat.
as 9,000 years after Göbekli Tepe,
Oh, you're flying.
and he
Oh,
refuses
Jesus.
point blank to allow me
Jesus
to claim
Christ.
I'm about to get
Keep an
into
eye
my
out in the
conclusion.
sky. You
There is
may
in
see
fact
shit.
excellent evidence that the
And
zodiac
I
was
saw
formed
some
much
shit
long
very
before
interesting
Göbekli
looking
Tepe,
today.
but I notice a group of other figures
I
higher up the
couldn't
same
make out
mountain
any
that have
topography on it. Definitely a
these
shadow in
include
the
a
sky
prominent depiction of a vulture with its wings
after
outstretched in
sunrise.
the manner of a
That's
human
what,
arm,
that's what. I saw
and
a
with a
plane
solid
flying up
disc
around it.
poised over that arm-like wing, as
That'd
though
be a
being
pretty good
upheld
fucking
or
shot.
cradled by it. Another human characteristic of the vulture, quite dissimilar to any examples of this bird that I have ever seen in nature, is that it is portrayed with its knees bent forward and with
Oh
straight
yeah,
lean
I've
legs.
actually told that story a few times. This is a friend of mine from
Cartoon representations of penguins
back in Cali,
with background
um,
animals. It is, in other
and
words, very ample.
I went into his shop one
Very
day
few
and asked him. I says,
anthropomorphists are
"Robert,
anthropomorphists.
you seen the
A hybrid creature,
you seen the
a
moon
human
fucking
hybrid.
doing a cartwheel?" Because I watched it a little bit
Above it are more
and
of
saw it
its
was doing a
shape
cartwheel. And he
and
looks at me. To this day I don't know why in the hell he said. He goes, "No, but have you heard of the Anunnaki?"
some
And I was like,
communication
"No."
violet at the top of the
and
page are depictions of
so he
wonderful
started
creatures
rifling through some
called
pictures,
handbags. They
and
kindly
he
contain
come
symbols
across
of
this fucking
various
lizard dude. And I
separated
don't think
by
he's
the
an
position of the
Anunnaki
front
person
panels in each
after what I
case
know about
are
them.
three figures.
But
At the left,
this
a bird with
motherfucker,
long,
man,
human-like
he
antennae
had a short
without any
snout, little tiny
semblance of
teeth
very
and
ample.
shit,
A quadruped
and
with its
a big
tail
wide
arched deep
mouth
over its body,
kind of
and
thing.
a sideburn.
And
There is something
the fucked up thing is
about
it
Holt's
was
creation,
drawn,
but
right?
I feel certain
And the
that
guy that
there
drew
is
it
something very like it somewhere.
drew this fucking
The only
uniform
problem
on
is
it
I can't remember it well,
that I had seen before with
so
that
I have decided
face.
to take a detailed
And the
photo of it.
uniform
And when she is
was like
done,
football
I strictly
pads on his
suggest that you
shoulders,
repeat that
his
with her,
forearms. He had
as
like
you would
gloves
with
on,
anthropomorphists of the
and
other
all
side
of
of
them
the
had
region,
big fucking
revealing
spikes. Like that
hidden
motherfucker could have
secrets
just
within.
jumped right through me with his
It's
little
just
fucking
one of the
spikes all the way
dozens
up
of
his
great
fucking
local
shoulder,
art
right?
forms
And I'm
developed
looking at
over
this
the
shit. I'm like,
centuries.
Jesus fucking Christ! I know that motherfucker because I had had an experience 6 years before
Character-wise,
um,
as we walk, I
with
ask the
Seamus's
person
mom
how
out in the middle of Arizona,
Quebec.
uh, about
I
40
wrote about his
miles
firm views on the evolution of
northwest
life.
of fucking
Turns
Phoenix.
out that he
We're out
was
in the middle of nowhere where
because
they
other
got these
anthropologists
big,
also had firm
tall,
views on this.
pinpointed black peaks
In
sticking out of the
1968,
sand
a
dunes.
joint
Fucking amazing looking
resolution paper
topography.
from the Boston
And I was
Epistolary
blowing
visits
glass,
the area
much like I
proceeds
planned to blow glass with Seamus here
assertion
in the
that they
RV,
discovered Stonehenge sites.
outside under the fucking
However,
sun
when they
and the
saw the
tarp and shit.
large V-shaped
And my
walls
dogs at the
of
time
earth
started barking.
and the remains of
I looked
humanity
up,
from limestone
and there was
beds
lights
in the
over the
Quebec
fucking
Farm
like three of these
Environment,
five peaks in
they
front of me.
dismissed them as
And I'm all like, what the
unlikely
fuck?
and moved
So
the
fucking
case
I'm
on.
sitting there watching it, and then there's five. And I called out
The
Seamus,
American
Mom, I
military
says, come out here.
judged the work
And
as
she came out and she fucking took pictures of it.
too occult,
And
too
I was kind
scientific,
of freaked out because
too
these lights started
then,
fucking flashing in unison
despite the
with
presence of
her clicking the
evidence of
fucking camera. And I
unseen
realized that she was
activity,
doing a
although
flash
there was
as
nothing
they were
like
flashing.
abandoned
And I was like, oh,
non-scientific
wow,
and
fuck
therefore
that.
no
So I
conclusive
told her, I said,
evidence
give me the
whatsoever.
camera. And I took a couple
Ultimately, she
pictures of the
succumbed.
dogs.
At the end of the
And she's
1980s,
sitting there watching
even to
the
1990s,
fucking lights. And then I
she
started
became involved in
fucking
another
taking pictures of them. And she
the
screamed
excavation
and
of
ran
the
into the
universe
RV.
called
And I
Younger
was like,
Dryas. The
standing
series
there
played
looking
out
like, oh God, I'm
where
not
the
gonna outrun them. Because to
anthropomorphists
get where we
noticed
were,
the early
we had
remains
taken like
of
almost an
aborigines
hour going out like an old washed out
and
fucking
finally worked to
uh,
T-shape
you
limestone
know
pillars that would
flatbed
physically date
river kind of
a good 8 years
thing
after
in
the
a
catastrophe
32-foot RV.
summed it up
So
perfectly.
we weren't breaking any land speed records.
Science. The scientists showed we recognized that this region had something about it that was different from other sites known from this period. The Valley Chori was
Well,
impressed
I
with the existence of large-scale
fuck
limestone
man,
structures,
I
building
blew the
traditions
glass the rest of the
coinciding
day,
to
and
early British
then
farming.
fucking
According
noticed
to
that
them,
the like three of the
1968,
lights had gone
they came
away
across the report of
and
a British
consistently
experiment
stayed
about 30 years earlier
away.
and stumbled upon a single
And
photograph that
I
mentioned the
just got
presence
that
of
hair
rock
on the back of my
cliffs
neck,
formed
feeling
under
like someone's in
fragments of
this bush
limestone
behind me watching
and
me, kind
vines of
of thing.
soil.
And I stopped blowing
One of
glass,
the young archaeologists
and that
recognized
time I didn't have a
he
trailer
told
either.
me,
So what I did is I left
I
my table
immediately
sit there.
realized that there could be
I
something missing
decided
about
that
this.
my kiln was
Perhaps no
probably
site as important as the Valley Chori.
the least valuable of stuff,
It was
so
witnesses
I'd
of
sit that out
deposits
there
of
until it cooled
sandstone
down,
and
and
petrol
it did.
pillars
So I brought it back in.
associated with
But
the
I mean,
limestone
I threw my
formations.
fucking shit in the window. I was ready to
However,
drive off if I had to
there
because
was
I
a
was getting
slight
that fucking icky feeling.
difference there.
And
The
we
discovery
had a
was something
satellite
along
dish,
those yes
so she
lines.
had the HBO going
I
on
glanced
over
at him. For
there.
close to
Hard
2
life
minutes,
in
as
the
we'd been
RV
walking
sometimes.
slowly, we'd approached a scene
And
of intense activity. I have been
Fucking,
aware of it from the four main enclosures,
I fell
six of
asleep
them
with
concealed
my
across the
gun.
summit of the ridge. But now we
Straight
find
just
ourselves
fell. I didn't have my safety glasses on either,
down the
Glenn.
other side into another formation nominated as an project that Schmidt has overlooked.
You know,
Five or
Glenn,
six German
we'll be
infantry
twitching again
were
soon.
busy
Hey,
with
Mike,
some
did you like it?
in layers of
Huh?
stone
Did you like it?
pouring back
Like what?
Does it look good on your piece?
Oh, I haven't seen it. Is it in here?
Yeah.
I ain't even seen it. Look.
The focus is on a large rectangular.
We're listening to Graham Hancock, Glenn. I know you're going to be happy
It's
about it.
internally
Is it?
subdivided into a dozen or so smaller segments.
You know, I need to twitch just as bad as you do, Glenn.
Most are t-shirts.
You know, one of my favorite parts of the day, after I tell you all good night, I click on Pandora. I miss my musics and sharing screens with y'all and talking about what we want to, because I don't feel like we can talk about much over here. I've lost 7 channels on this format.
I love the marble.
Nice,
Super cool.
awesome,
Super
cool.
cool.
Glad you like it. You bet, bro.
Right at the edge of this segment of the head of another pillar can be seen, while in the middle of the segment, a deeper trench.
It looks good in the sun.
Those what I guess is the third of the line. And this trench too is lined by the same row of columns. I asked Schmidt all those columns, I said, how did they get there? They don't look like the result of natural sedimentation. They're not.
Oh, I've got a laptop. I'll find that fucking charger cord. It's somewhere. It's a mess. I need to go through the RV and fucking sort everything out. And the storage unit, if it's not in there.
For example, enclosure C is the oldest we've found so far.
It'll be soon. Sorry, Glenn. But thanks, though. I was thanking you this morning for that big bag of weed. Shit. Now I forgot what the hell we was talking about. Anyway, we're listening to Graham Hancock. Have a good one, Kat.
First, the implication is that the megalithic sites around the world.
Did you? Nice. I need to go grab a triple out of there.
Archaeologists have arrived at could be falsely young as a result of
I'll be right back.
which
I need to get some water, too.
kind of material that is
I'm
so
thirsty.
because of course you can't carbon date organic materials like stone. Theoretically, this could mean that famous megalithic sites that were not deliberately buried by their builders, temples of Malta, for example, or the Cowlers of Menorca, or the stone circles of Avery and Stonehenge in England, could turn out to be much older than we're presently told. Secondly, if the bulk of the dates of Göbekli Tepe are derived from organic materials in the fill, a fact that I'm later able to confirm from Schmidt's published papers, then this tells us only about the age of the fill. The megalithic pillars themselves must be at least that old, but they could be older since they stood in place before being buried for a period of unknown duration. Thirdly, and perhaps most important, why was the site infilled? What could possibly be the motive for going to all this trouble to create a series of spectacular megalithic circles, only to end up deliberately burying them so thoroughly and so efficiently that more than 10,000 years would pass before they were found again? The first thought that comes to my mind is time consuming. That Göbekli Tepe was created to transmit a message of some kind to the future, and buried so that its message could be kept intact and hidden for millennia. It's a thought that will return to haunt me many times as I continue my investigation. But another full year will pass before it comes to fruition, as we'll see in later chapters. Meanwhile, when I put the question to Klaus Schmidt, he offers a completely different explanation for the deliberate burial of the servants of pillars. In my opinion, this was their They may be anxious to be buried. Maybe to be buried. I'm intrigued. I'm waiting for him to say, as a time capsule, but instead he replies, like, for example, the megalithic cemeteries in Western Europe, huge constructions, and then a mound on top. But only for burial of bodies. Is there any evidence of burial of bodies here? We don't have burials yet. We have some fragments of human bones mixed in with animal bones in the filling material, but no burials at the moment. We expect we'll find some soon. So you believe Göbekli Tepe was a necropolis? It still has to be proved, but that's my hypothesis, yes. And those fragments of human bones you found mixed with animal bones in the infill, what do you make of those? Sacrifice? Cannibalism? I don't think so, Schmidt replies. My guess is that those bones are evidence of some special treatment of the human body after death, perhaps deliberate extermination. Such rites were practiced at a number of other known sites in the region that were of about the same age. For me, the presence of human bones in the filling material strengthens the hypothesis that we will find primary burials somewhere in Göbekli Tepe, burials that were opened after some time for a continuation of very specific rituals performed with the dead. What then, I asked, was the function of the pillars? The T-shaped pillars are certainly anthropomorphic symbols, yet often with animals depicted, perhaps telling us stories connected with the T-shaped beings. We can't be sure, of course, but I think they represent divine beings. And even when they're not T-shaped, I point to the lion pillar, like this one. It too has an animal depicted. Schmidt shrugs. We cannot know for sure. Perhaps we will never know. There is so much mystery. We can excavate for 50 years and still not find all the answers. We're just at the beginning. But even so, we do have some answers, I point out. We clearly have some ideas. This lion pillar, for example, are you at least able to say how old it is? Honestly, we don't know, Schmidt replies. When we excavate the infill, we will hopefully find some organic material that we can comment on. Until we do, we can't be sure. But what's your impression from the style? Schmidt shrugs again before conceding, a little begrudgingly. It looks similar to some of the pillars in Enclosure C. Which are the oldest, I say. Yes, so something of that age. And that would be what exactly? Exactly 9,600 BC calibrated is the earliest date we have. Radiocarbon years and calendar years drift further and further apart as time goes by, because the amount of radioactive isotope carbon-14 in the atmosphere and in all living organic things varies from epoch to epoch. Fortunately, scientists have found ways, too complicated to go into at this moment, to correct for such fluctuations. The process is called calibration. So when Schmidt says 9,600 BC calibrated, he's giving me coordinates. What 9,600 BC calibrated means in 2013 when I'm talking to you is therefore 9,600 years plus the 2,030 years that have elapsed since the time of Christ. In other words, 11,613 years ago. I'm writing this sentence in December 2014. You might not read it until 2016, by which time that oldest date that Schmidt is referring to will work out at 11,616 years ago. You get the idea. In other words, put simply, and in round numbers, the oldest parts of the Göbekli Tepe to have been excavated so far are a little over 11,600 years old. And despite all the cautions and qualifications he has expressed, what Schmidt is telling me is that in his informed opinion and stylistic grounds, the lion pillar we are looking at is likely to be at least as old as anything hitherto excavated at Göbekli Tepe. Indeed, although he hasn't said so much, there's very little evidence one way or the other. The possibility has to be considered that it might be older. After all, he's already admitted that the best work at Göbekli Tepe is the oldest. It's troubling, therefore, despite the hope he's expressed that further excavation will reveal the small beginnings that we expect but haven't yet found, that this first piece of further excavation has in fact uncovered no such small beginnings. On the contrary, what it has brought to light is a massive, superbly executed megalithic pillar with a lion rampant exquisite high relief that appears, at least on stylistic grounds, to be extremely poor. Perhaps, rather than Schmidt's hoped for small beginnings, further excavations will only uncover more of the same. We know here, the professor tells me firmly, the youngest layers of the Bentley date to 8,200 BC. That's when the site is abandoned forever, but we don't know the beginning yet. Except that date of 9,600 BC, 11,600 years ago, that you have from enclosure C. That's the beginning, at least as far as you've been able to establish it up to now. The beginning of the monumental phase, yes. There's a blink in the professor's eye. And you know, 9,600 BC is an important date. It isn't just a number, it's the end of the Ice Age. It's a global phenomenon. So since this goes in parallel, the date Schmidt is putting such emphasis on rings a sudden bell in my mind, relating to other research I've been doing, and I feel compelled to interrupt. 9,600 BC, that's not just the end of the Ice Age, it's the end of the Younger Dryas cold spell that starts in what, 10,800 BC and ends in 9,620 BC, Schmidt continues, according to the ice cores from Greenland. So how likely is it to be an accident that the monumental phase at Göbekli Tepe starts in 9,600 BC, when the climate of the whole world has taken a sudden turn for the better, and there's an explosion in nature and in possibilities? I can only agree. It doesn't seem likely that it's an accident at all. On the contrary, I feel certain there must be a connection. We'll explore that connection and the mysterious cataclysmic period that geologists call the Younger Dryas, and what those Greenland ice cores tell us in part two. Meanwhile, back in 2013, I closed my interview with Klaus Schmidt with some praise, and in December 2014, as I sit at my desk, going through the transcript of the recording I made with Beckett, and knowing that Klaus died of a massive, unexpected heart attack in February 2014, I'm glad I did so. You're a very humble man, I said, but the fact is, you've discovered a site that has caused all of us to rethink our ideas of things. This is a remarkable thing, and I believe that your name, as well as the name of the Beckett, will go down in history. The bringers of civilization. After leaving the Göbekli Tepe in mid-September 2013, I make an extensive journey through the length and breadth of Turkey before I finally return home. The lion pillar sticks in my memory, but what particularly haunts me is the scene on pillar number 33 in enclosure B, the scene showing the vulture with its bent, human-like wings, and its wing that so much resembles life, holding up a solid disc. I download surface photographs onto my computer and crawl up that scene. It has many remarkable elements as well as the disc. Both wings of the vulture are shown in the downloads, the other stretched out behind its body. To the right of the vulture is a serpent. It has a large triangular head, as do all serpents depicted at the Göbekli Tepe, and its body is coiled into a curve, with its tail extending down towards an H-shaped pictogram. The serpent is nestled close to another large bird, not a vulture, but something more like an ibis with a long, sickle-shaped beak. Between it and the vulture is yet another bird, again with a hooked beak, but smaller, with the look of a chick. I turn my attention to the disc. I don't know what to make, but the obvious guess from its shape is that it's meant to represent the sun. There's something else that interests me more, however, if I can just put my finger on what it is. Something evocative, something hauntingly familiar about the imagery of this ancient pillar from the Göbekli Tepe. Santa has shot hundreds of frames of it from every possible angle, and obsessively I keep going through them, hoping for some clue. The vulture, the disc, and in the next register above the vulture, that weird row of bags with their carved handles. Bags. Handles. Suddenly I get it. I go to the shelf in my library where I keep reference books of my own books. Pull out fingerprints and dots and start leafing through the photo sections. The first section deals with South America, and what I'm looking for isn't there. And the second section is devoted to Mexico, and on the fifth page I find it. It's image number 33 with the caption, Man in Serpent Sculpture from the Olmec site of La Venta. It's Salta's photograph taken way back in 1992 or 1993 of an impressive relief carved on a slab of solid granite measuring about 1.2 meters, 4 feet wide, and 1.5 meters, 5 feet long. The relief features what is believed to be the earliest representation of the Central American deity whom the Maya, a later civilization of the Olmecs, would call Kukulkan, and who was known by the even later Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl. All three names mean headed serpent, sometimes translated as plumed serpent. And it is such a serpent, decorated with a prominent feathered crest on its head, that we see here. Its powerful body flows sinuously around the outer edge of the relief, cradling the figure of a man who is depicted in a seated position, as though he's reaching for pedals with his feet. In his right hand, he's holding what I described at the time as a small bucket-shaped object. I returned to Santa's images from enclosure D at Quebec and am immediately able to confirm what I suspected. The three bags on the pillow closely resemble the bucket-shaped object from La Venta in Mexico. The same curved handles there appears the profile of the bags and of the bucket, slightly wider at the bottom than on top, is also very similar. If that were all there was to it, this would surely be a coincidence. The man in certain relief from La Venta is thought by archaeologists to date to the period between the 10th and the 6th centuries BC, about 9,000 years younger than the imagery from the Quebec. So how could there possibly be a connection? That's when I remember a second curious image I reproduced on pigments for the gods. I checked the index for the name Oannes. Turn to chapter 11. You'll find another figure of a man carrying a bag or bucket. I hadn't noticed the resemblance between it and man in circle before, but it's obvious to me now. Although not absolutely identical, both bags have the same curved handle that is also depicted on the Quebec itinerary. Quickly I scanned through the report I wrote 20 years earlier. Oannes was a civilizing hero, revered by all the ancient cultures of Mesopotamia. He was said to have appeared there in the remotest antiquity and to have taught the inhabitants the skills necessary for writing and for doing mathematics and for all sorts of knowledge, how to build cities, found temples, make laws, determine borders and divide land, also how to plant seeds and then to harvest their fruits and vegetables. In short, he taught men all those things conducive to a civilized life. The fullest account we have of Atlantis is found in surviving fragments of the works of the Babylonian priest Berosus, who wrote in the 3rd century BC. Unfortunately, I have a translation of all the Berosus fragments in one volume in my library, so I dig it out, along with a few other sources of ancient Mesopotamian myths and traditions. It doesn't take me long to discover that Atlantis did not do his work alone, but was supposedly the leader of a group of beings known as the Seven Akam, seven sages, who were said to have lived before the flood, a cataclysmic global being which features prominently in many Mesopotamian traditions, including those of Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, and Babylon. Alongside Oannes, these sages are portrayed as bringers of civilization who, in the most ancient past, gave humanity a moral code, arts, crafts, and agriculture, and taught them architectural, building, and engineering skills. That's a list, I can't help thinking, that includes all the skills supposedly invented at the Göbekli Tepe. I call up a map on my computer screen and see that not only does southeastern Turkey adjoin Mesopotamia geographically, but also that the two areas are linked in an even more intimate and direct way. Largely occupied today by the modern state of Iraq, the ancient name Mesopotamia means literally land between rivers. The rivers in question being the Tigris and the Euphrates, which reach the sea in the Persian Gulf, but which both have their headwaters on the same Taurus mountain range of southeastern Turkey, where the Göbekli Tepe is situated. While I'm online, I run some searches for images of the seven stages. I don't get many hits at first, but the moment I change the search terms to Akkad and seven Akkad, I open a colossal archive of images from all over the internet, many of them reliefs from Assyria, a culture that thrived in Mesopotamia from approximately 2500 BC to about 600 BC. I add Assyrian Akkad to the search parameters, and even more images flood my screen. Often they show bearded men holding bags or buckets, which closely resemble those depicted on the Rebecca pillar and the one held by the Mexican man in circle figure. It's not just the curved handles of these containers or their shape, but the resemblance is much closer than on the original Goannis relief I reproduced in fingerprints and photos. Even more striking is the peculiar and distinctive way the figures from old Mesopotamia and Mexico hold these containers with the fingers of the hands turned inwards and the thumb crooked forwards over the handle. There's something else as well. A good number of the images show not a man, but a therianthrope, a bird with a hooked beak exactly like the hooked beak of the therianthrope in the Gobekli Tepe. What makes the resemblance even closer is that in the Mesopotamian reliefs, the birdman is holding a container in one hand and a cone-shaped object in the other. The shape is a little different, but a comparison with the disc cradled above the wing of the Gobekli Tepe birdman is hard to resist. I can't prove anything yet. It could, of course, all be coincidence, or I could be imagining links that aren't there. But my curiosity is aroused by the similar containers on different continents in different epochs, and so I jot down a series of questions that can form the frame of a loose hypothesis for future testing. For instance, could these containers, whether they're bags or buckets, be the symbols of office of an initiatic Rome, far traveled and deeply ancient, with roots reaching back into the remotest prehistory? I feel that this possibility, extraordinary though it may seem on the face of things, is worth looking into, and is strengthened by the distinctive hand costumes. Might these not have served the same sort of function as Masonic handshakes today, providing an instant means of identifying who is an insider and who is not? And what might have been the purpose of such a brotherhood? Curiously enough, in both Mexico and Mesopotamia, where myths and traditions have survived in connection with the imagery and symbolism, we are left in no doubt as to what the purpose was. Stated simply, it was to teach, to govern, and to spread the benefits of civilization. This, after all, was the explicit function of Oannes and the Elkanah sages, who taught the inhabitants of Mesopotamia how to plant seeds and then to harvest their fruits and vegetables, agriculture, and who also taught them architectural and engineering skills, notably building temples. If they needed to be taught these things, then they must have had no knowledge of them before the arrival of the sages. They must, in other words, have been nomadic and Tagalos, just as the inhabitants of southeastern Turkey were until the sudden and surprising entry into the world stage of the Göbekli Tepe. The same, it transpires, is believed to be the case with the ancient inhabitants of Mexico before the arrival of Quetzalcoatl, feathered serpents, who came to teach them the benefits of settled agriculture and the skills necessary to build temples. Although this deity is frequently depicted as a serpent, he is more often shown in human form, the serpent being his symbol and his alter ego, and is usually described as a tall, bearded, white man, a mysterious person, a white man with a strong formation of body, broad forehead, large eyes, and a flowing beard. Indeed, as Sylvanus Griswold Morley, the doyen of Mayan studies, concluded, the attributes and life history of Quetzalcoatl are so unique that it is not improbable that he may have been an actual historical character, the memory of whose benefactions lingered after his death, and whose personality was eventually deified. The same could very well be said of Oannes, just like Oannes at the head of the Alcala, likewise depicted as prominently bearded. It seems that Quetzalcoatl traveled with his own brotherhood of sages and magicians. We learn that they arrived in Mexico from across the sea in a boat that moved by itself without paddles, and that Quetzalcoatl was regarded as having been the founder of cities, the framer of rules, and the teacher of economy. The 16th century Spanish chronicler, Bernardino de Sahagún, was fluent in the language of the Aztecs and took great care to record their ancient traditions accurately, tells us further that Quetzalcoatl was a great civilizing agent who entered Mexico at the head of a band of strangers. He imported arts into the country and especially fostered agriculture. He built spacious and elegant houses and inculcated a type of religion which fostered peace. So, in summary, as well as a complex pattern of shared symbols and iconography, Quetzalcoatl and Dryas share the same civilizing mission, which they delivered in widely separated regions of the world, in an epoch that is always described as being very far back in time, remote, antediluvian, and hoary old age. The prolific period as far back as 9600 BC, the epoch of Aquitaine, where many of the same symbols are found, and where, although we have no surviving legends, signs of a civilizing mission in the form of the sudden appearance of agriculture and monumental architecture are everywhere to be seen. The implications, should I ever be able to prove this hypothesis, are stunning. At the very least, it would mean that some as yet unknown and unidentified people somewhere had already mastered all the arts and attributes of a high civilization more than 12,000 years ago in the depths of the last ice age, that had sent out emissaries around the world to spread the benefits of their knowledge. Who might these shadowy emissaries have been? These sages, these magicians of the gods, as I was already beginning to think of them. And why was there this insistent connection to the date of 9600 BC? For as Klaus Schmidt rightly pointed out as he showed me round Göbekli Tepe under the baking sun of the Taurus Mountains, 9600 BC is indeed an important date. Important not only because it marks the end of the Ice Age, but for another rather surprising reason as well. The Greek lawmaker Solon visited Egypt in 600 BC, and there he was told a very extraordinary story by the priests at the Temple of Sais in the Nile Delta, a story that was eventually handed down to his more famous descendant Plato, who in due course shared it with the world in his dialogues of Timaeus and Critias. It is, of course, the story of the great lost civilization called Atlantis, swallowed up by flood and earthquake in a single terrible day of night, 9,000 years before the time of Solomon, in our covenant, in 9600 BC. Chapter 2: The Mountain of Light. Everything we've been taught about the origins of civilization may be wrong, says Daniel Bajaji, PhD, senior geologist with the Research Center for Geotechnology at the Indonesian Institute of Sciences. All stories about Atlantis and other great lost civilizations of prehistory, long dismissed as myths by archaeologists, or accepted to be true. It's December 2013. We're in Shanju Regency, about 900 meters, 2,950 feet above sea level, and 70 kilometers, 43 miles, west of the city of Bandung on the island of Java, Indonesia. I'm climbing with Dr. Natwajaja up the steep slope of a 110-meter, 360-foot high step pyramid, set amidst a magical landscape of volcanoes, mountains, and jungles, interspersed with paddy fields and tea plantations. In 1914, lying scattered amongst the dense trees and undergrowth that then covered the summit of the pyramid, ancient man-made structures formed from blocks of columnar basalt were first shown to archaeologists. Local people held the site to be sacred and called it Gunung Padang, the name it still goes by today, often mistranslated as mountain field by those unaware that the language of this area is not Indonesian but Sundanese, in which Gunung Padang means mountain of light or mountain of enlightenment. The structures were found to be arranged across 5 terraces with a combined area of about 150 meters, 492 feet long, by 40 meters, 131 feet wide. The visiting archaeologists were told that the terraces had been used as a place of meditation and retreat since time immemorial, and again, this remains true today. However, neither the archaeologists nor apparently the locals realized the pyramid was a pyramid. It was believed to be a natural hill, somewhat modified by human activity, until Natwajaja and his team began a geophysical survey in 2011 using ground-penetrating radar, electron resistivity, and seismic tomography. By then, the summit had long since been cleared, and the structures on the terraces recognized as works of Neolithic architecture, but no radiocarbon dating had yet been done, and the age attributed to the site, about 1000 BC, was based on guesswork rather than on excavations. The first scientific radiocarbon dating was done by Younger Dryas himself on organic materials and soils underlying the megaliths at or near the surface. The dates produced around 500 to 1500 BC were close enough to the archaeological guesswork to cause no controversy. But a surprise result as Younger Dryas and his team extended their investigation using tubular drills that brought up cores of earth and stone from much deeper levels. First, the drill cores contained evidence, fragments of worked column and basalt, that more man-made megalithic structures lay far beneath the surface. Secondly, the organic materials brought up in the drill cores began to yield older dates, 3000 BC to 5000 BC, then 9600 BC as the drills bit deeper, then around 11,000 BC, then 15,000 BC, and finally at depths of 27.5 meters, 90 feet, an astonishing sequence of dates of 20,000 BC to 22,000 BC. This was not at all what my colleagues in the world of archaeology expected or wanted to hear, says Nigel Judge, a world-renowned expert in the geology of megathrust earthquakes, who earned his PhD at Caltech in the United States, and who, it becomes apparent, regards archaeology as a thorough and scientific discipline. A truly cataclysmic period. The problem is that those dates, going back before 9600 BC, take us deep into the last ice age, when Indonesia was not a series of islands as it is today. It was part of a vast antediluvian Southeast Asian continent dubbed Sundaland by geologists. Sea level was 122 meters, 400 feet lower then. Huge ice caps, 3.2 kilometers, 2 miles deep, covered most of Europe and North America until the ice caps began to melt. Then all the water stored in them returned to the oceans, and sea level rose, submerging many parts of the world where humans had previously lived. Thus Britain was joined to Europe during the Ice Age. There was no English Channel or the sea. Likewise, there was no Red Sea, no Persian Gulf. Sri Lanka was joined to southern India. Siberia was joined to Alaska. Australia was joined to New Guinea, and so on and so forth. It was during this epoch of sea level rise, sometimes slow and continuous, sometimes rapid and cataclysmic, that the Ice Age continent of Sundaland was submerged, with only the Malaysian Peninsula and the Indonesian islands as we know them today high enough to remain afloat. As we saw in the last chapter, the established archaeological view of the state of human civilization until the end of the last Ice Age is that our ancestors were primitive hunter-gatherers, ignorant of agriculture, and incapable of any architectural feats bigger than woodlands and bivouacs. This is why Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey is so significant, because it breaks that paradigm wide open and cries out for serious consideration of the possibility, previously relegated to the lunatic fringe, that civilization might be much older and more mysterious than we thought. With the date of its foundation presently set at 9600 BC, exactly 9600 BC, as Klaus Schmidt was at pains to point out to me, Göbekli Tepe also requires us to reopen the cold case of Atlantis, which archaeologists have long ridiculed, pouring scorn and derision on anyone daring to utter a much reviled aim. As noted at the end of the last chapter, the Greek philosopher Plato, whose dialogues to Timaeus and Critias contain the earliest surviving mention of the famous volcano, sets the catastrophic destruction and submergence of Atlantis by floods and earthquakes of 9,000 years before the time of Solomon, exactly 9600 BC. The Greeks could not have known Göbekli Tepe, let alone that it was mysteriously founded at the very moment Atlantis was said to have died. Moreover, they had no access to the Greenland ice cores dating the end of the Ice Age to 9620 BC, just 20 years before the foundation of Göbekli Tepe, nor to modern scientific knowledge about rapidly rising sea levels, often accompanied by cataclysmic earthquakes as the weight of the melting ice caps was removed from the continental land masses that occurred in this period. With all this in mind, therefore, the date Plato gives is, to say the least, an uncanny coincidence. In Danny Nakavijaja's view, however, it is no coincidence at all. His research at Gunung has convinced him that Plato was right about the existence of a high civilization in the depths of the last ice age, a civilization that was indeed brought to a catalyst beginning, involving floods of earthquakes, an epoch of great global instability between 10,800 BC and 9,600 BC. This epoch, which geologists call the Younger Dryas, has long been recognized as mysterious and tumultuous. In 10,800 BC, when it began, the Earth had been emerging from the Ice Age for roughly 10,000 years. Global temperatures were rising steadily, and the ice caps were melting. Then there was a sudden, dramatic return to colder conditions, nearly as cold as at the peak of the Ice Age 21,000 years ago. This short, sharp deep freeze lasted for 1,200 years until 9,600 BC, when the warming trend resumed. Global temperatures shot up again, and the remaining ice caps melted very suddenly, dumping all the water they contained into the oceans. It is difficult, Matabajaja says, for us to imagine what life on Earth must have been like during the Younger Dryas. It was a truly cataclysmic period of immense climate instability and terrible, indeed terrifying global conditions. It's not surprising that many large animal species, such as the mammoths, went extinct during this precise time. And of course, it had huge effects on our ancestors, not just those primitive hunter gatherers the archaeologists speak of, but also, I believe, a high civilization that was wiped from the historical record by the upheavals of the Younger Dryas. A controversial pyramid. What has brought Nakabajaja to this radical view is the evidence he and his team have uncovered at Gunung. When their drill crews began to yield very ancient carbon dates from organic materials embedded in clays, filling the gaps between worked stones, they expanded their investigation using geophysical equipment like ground-penetrating radar, seismic tomography, and electrical resistivity to get a picture of what lay under the ground. The results were stunning, showing layers of massive construction using the same megalithic elements of columnar basalt that are found on the surface, but with courses of huge basaltic rocks beneath them, extending down to 30 meters, 100 feet or more beneath the surface. At those depths, the carbon dates indicate that the megaliths were put in place more than 12,000 years ago, and in some cases, as far back as 24,000 years ago. Columnar basalt does form naturally. The famous Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland is an example. But at Gunung Padang, it has been used as a building material and is laid out in a form never found in nature. The geophysical evidence is unambiguous, Nakabajaja says. Gunung Padang is not a natural hill, but a man-made pyramid, and the origins of construction here go back long before the end of the last ice age. Since the work is massive, even at the deepest levels, and bears witness to the kinds of sophisticated construction skills that were deployed to build the pyramids of Egypt, the largest megalithic sites of Europe, I can only conclude that we're looking at the work of a lost civilization, and a fairly advanced one. The archaeologists won't like that, I point out. They don't, Natabajaja agrees with a rueful smile. I've already got myself into a lot of hot water on this. My case is a solid one, based on good scientific evidence, but it's not an easy one. I'm up against deeply entrenched beliefs. The next step will be a full-scale archaeological excavation. We have to excavate in order to interrogate our remote sensing data and our carbon dating sequences, and either confirm or deny what we believe we found here, says Natabajaja. But unfortunately, there's a lot of obstacles in our way. When I ask what he means by obstacles, he replies that some senior Indonesian archaeologists are lobbying the government in Jakarta to prevent him from doing any further work at Gunung Padang on the grounds that they know the site is less than 3,000 years old and see no justification for disturbing it. I don't deny that the megaliths at the surface are less than 3,000 years old, Natabajaja hastens to add, but I suggest they were put here because Gunung Padang has been recognized as a sacred place since time immemorial. It's the deepest layers of the structure, between 12,000 and more than 20,000 years old, that are the most important. They have potentially revolutionary implications for our understanding of history, and I think it's vital that we be allowed to investigate them. Atlantis. Happily, there was a decisive presidential intervention during 2014, and I can now report that Danny, I'll use his first name henceforth as we become friends, was given carte blanche to excavate the site. He and his team began work in August 2014, completing a short season there between August and October. But as the experience of Göbekli Tepe shows, painstaking, detailed archaeology is a slow process, and they do not expect to reach the deepest layers until 2017 or 2018. As the first season neared its end, however, Danny emailed me an update. The research progress has been great. We have excavated 3 more spots right on top of the magnetic site in the past couple of weeks, which give more evidence and detail about the buried structures. We have uncovered lots more stone artifacts from the excavations. The existence of a pyramid-like structure beneath the magnetic site is now loud and clear. Even for non-specialists, it's not too difficult to understand if they cannot see for themselves. We have found some kind of open floor, buried by soil 5 to 7 meters.
All right, so I got to do a down slip for this one. Sorry, we were talking shop. I got to do a down slip for this one. He likes the marble I put on it yesterday. Here's a triple I did yesterday. That motherfucker sits nice too. Now I got a double and a triple, 3 bubblers, and a whole bunch of hand pipes. I think this is probably my favorite one. Favorite little hand pipe I did this week. I got another one with the dichro on it. I like the dichro. I like the subtle with the latitude all through it too. Nice thick bunch of shit. And there's 3 holes. You can see that. 3 holes in the bowl. Fucking sweet. All right, we're at 10:50. Looks like we'll make a bubbler today.
Extensive research searching out many of the sites of travel never really studied by archaeologists. In chapter 18, I'll describe our findings and how they relate to the Gunung mystery. But meanwhile, I want to report here on the opinion of Dr. Shaw, professor of geology at
I saw my glasses over here.
December 2013. When I first met Danny at Gunung
God, even at low, I can tell that's Graham Hancock's voice.
the view of Professor Robert Schock. Schock is a renowned figure, indeed notorious
Schock,
for the
all
case he's made based on strict geological
fan of
evidence
our
that
buddy
the Great
Graham.
Sphinx of Giza bears the unmistakable erosion patterns of thousands of years of heavy rainfall. This means it has to be much older than 2,500 BC.
I gotta kick on the gases.
When Egypt received
You're
no
right.
more rain than it does today, it must originally have been carved around the end of the Ice Age, when the Nile Valley was subjected to a long period of intense precipitation. A tall, rangy, scholarly man with a full beard and a mop of unruly hair, Schock was in his element at Gunung Padang, carefully interrogating the results of the geophysical scans with Danny, collecting samples and minutely examining the site. Afterwards, when he'd returned to the US and had time to analyze the data, he wrote, "The first important observation is that Gunung Padang goes back to before the end of the last ice age, circa 9,700 BC. Based on the evidence, I believe that human use of the site began by circa 14,700 BC. Possibly the earliest use of the site goes back to 22,000 BC, or even earlier. In my assessment, layer 3, some 4 to 10 meters, 13.1 to 32.8 feet or so below the surface, includes the period of the very end of the last ice age, circa 10,000 to 9,500 BC, when major climatic changes took place, with dramatic global warming, rising sea levels, torrential rain, increased earthquake and volcanic activity, widespread wildfires, and other catastrophes occurring across the surface of the Earth. There is evidence of collapsed structures in layer 3, possibly from the Pondering the dates and evidence of collapse and rebuilding that may have occurred here, it could not help but think about another myth representing the very ancient civilization that spans the end of our cycle, namely the Reputation of southeastern Turkey. I also think it is in our own work on redating the Great Shock. The extreme weathering and erosion seen on the present sites. Head was recarved and the monument reused during dynastic time, caused by torrential rain, could have been a result of the extreme climatic changes at the end of the last ice age. Putting together the evidence of Purim Hadan with that derived from Göbekli Tepe, the Sphinx of Egypt, and other sites and lines of data from around the world, I believe we're coming closer to understanding the cataclysmic times and events at the end of the last ice age.
I think we're coming closer too.
Existed prior to 39,700 BC, which was devastated by the events that brought the last ice age to its end. Looking for the smoking gun. At 6,000 or more years older than the stone circles of Stonehenge, the megaliths of Göbekli Tepe, like the deeply buried megaliths of Purim Hadan, mean that the timeline of history taught in our schools and universities for the best part of the last 100 years can no longer stand. It is beginning to look as though civilization, as I argued in my controversial 1995 bestseller, Fingerprints to God, is indeed much older and much more mysterious than we thought. In essence, what I proposed in that book was that an advanced civilization had been wiped out and lost to history in a global cataclysm at the end of the last ice age. I suggested there were survivors who settled at various locations around the world and attempted to pass on their superior knowledge, including knowledge of agriculture and architecture, to hunter-gatherer peoples who had also survived the cataclysm. Indeed, even today, we have populations of hunter-gatherers in the Kalahari Desert, for instance, and in the Amazon jungle, who coexist with our advanced technological culture. So we shouldn't be surprised that equally disparate levels of civilization might have coexisted in the past. What I couldn't do when I wrote Fingerprints, because the data wasn't then available, was identify the exact nature of the cataclysm that had wiped out my hypothetical lost civilization. Instead, I speculated on a number of possible causes, notably the radical Earth crust displacement theory of Professor Charles Hapgood, which, though endorsed by Albert Einstein, has since found little favor amongst geologists. This absence of a credible smoking gun was one of the many aspects of my argument that was heavily criticized by archaeology. Since 2007, however, a cascade of scientific evidence has come to light that has identified the smoking gun forming. It's all the more intriguing because it's the work of a large group of impressively credentialed mainstream scientists, and because it does not rule out, indeed, it in some ways reinforces, the case for massive crustal instability that I made in Fingerprints of the God. We'll explore this new evidence and its stunning implications in the following chapters. Part 2. Comments. Chapter 3. A wall of green water destroying everything in its path. Could certain ancient myths and traditions, judged to be of no historic value by scholars, in fact encode accurate recollections of an epoch when humanity experienced a crisis so devastating, so cataclysmic, and so dislocating that we lost our memory of our true past? Consider this account from the Ojuba, a Native American people. The star, with the long white tail, is going to destroy the world someday when it comes low again. That's the comet called long-tailed heavenly climber star. It came down here then, thousands of years ago, just like the sun. It had radiation and burning heat in its tail. The comet burned everything to the ground. There wasn't a thing left. Indian people were here before that country, living on the earth. But things were wrong. A lot of people had abandoned the spiritual path. The Holy Spirit warned them a long time before the comet came. Medicine men told everyone to prepare. Things were wrong with nature on the earth. Then that comet went through here. It had a long white tail and it burnt up everything. It flew so low the tail scorched the earth. The comet made a different world. After that, survival was hard work. The weather was colder than before. There are other interesting details in the various versions of this myth, told amongst the Ojibwa and recorded by anthropologist Thor Conway. For example, there's a reference to the comet killing off giant animals. You can find their bones today in the earth. It is said that the comet came down and spread his tail for miles and miles. At the time of this event, usually referred to as the first burning of the earth, we are told that the Ojibwa lived near the edge of the frozen land. It's also recorded that soon after the comet disaster, the first flooding of the earth occurred. Just as the Ojibwa tradition laments that things were wrong, people had abandoned the spiritual path, thus implicating human behavior in the disaster that followed, so too the Brule, one of the tribes of the Lakota nation, tell of a time in the world before this one, when the people and animals turned to evil and forgot their connection to the Creator. In response, the Creator resolved to destroy the world and start over. He first warned a few good people to flee to the highest mountain top, then sent down fierce thunderbirds to wage a great battle against the other humans and the giant animals. Again, as in the Ojibwa myth, the Brule account speaks of animals of extraordinary size. Finally, at the height of the battle, the thunderbirds suddenly threw down their most powerful thunderbolt hurricane. The fiery blast shook the entire world, toppling mountain ranges and setting forests and prairies ablaze. The flames leapt up to the sky in all directions, sparing only the few people on the highest peaks. Even the rocks glowed red hot, and the giant animals and evil people burned up from their stood. Now the Creator began to make the world new. As the Creator chanted the song of creation, it began to rain. The Creator sang louder, and it rained harder, until the rivers overflowed their banks and surged across the landscape. Finally, the Creator stamped the earth, and with a great force the earth split open, sending great torrents across the entire world, until only a few mountain peaks stood above the flood, sheltering a few people who had survived. After the flood subsided, as the people went out over the land, they found the bleached bones of the giant animals buried in rock and mud. People still find them today in the Dakota Badlands. Of particular note, when we remember that a species of giant beaver became extinct in North America at the end of the Ice Age, or the myth of the Passamaquoddy, Micmac, and Maliseet, it speaks of a being called Glooskap, described as a spirit, a medicine man, and a sorcerer, who created the first animals, amongst them the first beaver, a creature so large that when it built a dam, it flooded the country from horizon to horizon. Glooskap tapped the beaver on its back, and it shrank to its present size. The reference to a flood in this story is one amongst hundreds in the myths of the Native Americans. Many of them contain intriguing details of great relevance to new scientific information about events in North America at the end of the Ice Age that we will explore in the following pages. For example, the Cowichan of British Columbia recall a time in the remote past when their seers became greatly troubled on account of strange dreams which foretold destruction. One man said, "I have dreamed a strange thing. I dreamed that such rain fell that we were all drowned." Another said, "I dreamed that the river rose and flooded the place, and we were all destroyed." "So did I," chimed another, "and I too." The seers were disbelieved by their teachers, but nonetheless resolved to build a huge raft of many canoes joined together. Not long after they were done, the rain commenced. The drops were as large as hailstones, and so heavy that they killed the little babies. The river rose, and all the valleys were covered. The seers, and those few of their friends who had believed them, took and placed them on the raft, and took food and waited. By and by the raft rose with the water. At length the rain stopped, and they felt the waters going down, and their raft rested on the top of Kawachan Mountain. And then they saw the land. But what desolation met their eyes! How their hearts were wrung with anguish! It was indescribable. Unusually large hailstones feature in the Quilayute cataclysm myth. For days and days, great storms blew. Rain and hail, and then sleet and snow came down upon the land. The hailstones were so large that many of the people were killed. The survivors grew thin and weak from hunger. The hailstones had beaten down the ferns and the camas and the berries. Ice locked the rivers so that men could not fish. The Pima, or river people, presently live in Arizona, whence they migrated in remote antiquity from much further north. As is the case with the Kawachan, a seer features in their cataclysm traditions. In this case, a seer who was warned by a great eagle that a flood was coming. The eagle visited the seer 4 times, and each time he ignored its warnings. "You'd better believe what I'm telling you," said the eagle. "The whole valley will be flooded. Everything will be destroyed." "You're a liar," said the seer. "And you're a seer who sees nothing," said the eagle. The bird flew away, and hardly had he gone when a tremendous thunderclap was heard, the loudest there has ever been. The sun remained hidden behind dark clouds, and there was only twilight, grey and misty. Then the earth trembled, and there came a great roar of something immense moving. The people saw a sheer green wall advancing toward them, filling the valley from one side to the other. At first they did not know what it was, and then they realized that it was a wall of green water, destroying everything in its path. It became like a huge beast, a green monster rushing upon them, foaming, hissing in a cloud of spray. It engulfed the seer's house and carried it away with the seer, who was never seen again. Then the water fell upon the villages, sweeping away homes, people, fields, and trees. The flood swept the valleys clean as with a broom. Then it rushed on beyond the valleys to wreak havoc elsewhere. The Inuit of Alaska preserve a tradition of an earthquake accompanied by a terrible flood that swept so rapidly over the earth that only a few people managed to escape in their canoes or take refuge on the top of the highest mountains. The Luiseno of California also remember a flood that covered the mountains and destroyed most of mankind. Only those few who fled to the highest peaks were spared when all the rest of the world was inundated. Similar flood myths were recorded amongst the Hurons, and the Montagnais, who belonged to the Algonquin family, relate how the god Michabo reconstructed the world after a great flood. Michabo was hunting with his pack of trained wolves one day when he saw the strangest sight. The wolves entered the lake and disappeared. He followed them into the water to fetch them, and as he did so, the entire world flooded. Michabo then sent forth a raven to find some soil with which to make a new earth, but the bird returned unsuccessful in its quest. Then Michabo sent an otter to do the same thing, but again to no avail. Finally, he sent the muskrat, and she brought him back enough earth to begin the reconstruction of the world. Lynn's History of the Dakotas, written in the 19th century, preserves many indigenous traditions that would otherwise have been lost. These include an Iroquois myth that the sea and the waters had at one time infringed upon the land so that all human life was destroyed. The Chickasaws asserted that the world had been destroyed by water, but that one family was saved and 2 animals of every kind. The Dakotas, also spoke of a time when there was no dry land and when all men disappeared from existence. Myths speaking to science. For years, an often acrimonious debate has been underway among scholars regarding the peopling of the Americas. Who are the Native Americans exactly? When did they first arrive in the New World? and by what route. Whenever a resolution has begun to look possible, whenever some kind of consensus has been about to emerge, new information has been presented by one side or the other that calls for a rethink. What has never been in dispute, however, is that the ancestors of today's Native Americans were already in North America 12,800 years ago, when the mysterious cold event that geologists call the Younger Dryas began, and that they witnessed and hunted the megafauna that flourished during the Ice Age, including the gigantic Columbian mammoth, the somewhat smaller woolly mammoth, the giant beaver, short-faced bears, giant sloths, two species of tapirs, several species of peccaries, and the fearsome American lion. It's thought likely, therefore, that the references to very large animals in the myths cited above are not mere fantasies, but preserved eyewitness accounts of some of the many genera of megamammals that were present in North America before the Younger Dryas began, but had passed into extinction by the time it ended 1,200 years later. The same goes for the floods that the myths describe. The geologists agree that North America was indeed subjected to episodes of cataclysmic flooding in the final millennia of the last ice age. What new research has called into question in the past decade, however, is whether the scale, extent, and most importantly, the causes of those floods have been properly understood. The mainstream view is copiously represented and endlessly repeated in books and journals published since the 1960s. But in order to get to grips with a powerful alternative view that now poses a serious challenge to established theories, I made an extensive field trip across North America in September and October 2014 with catastrophist researcher Randall Carlson. Randall cannot be a reincarnation of J. Harlan Bretz, because J. Harlan Bretz, whose first name was the letter J, and who hated it when proofreaders tried to treat it like an initial, passed away on the 3rd of February 1981, by which time Randall was already 30 years old. However, in his passion for real fieldwork, for walking the walk, rather than just reading the literature, and in his dogged advocacy of a radical geological hypothesis concerning the cataclysmic floods that tore North America apart at the end of the Ice Age, Randall is, in every meaningful sense, the new J. Harlan Bretz. I will describe my travels with Randall and the compelling evidence he presented me with in the chapters that follow. But first, you may well be wondering, who was J. Harlan Bretz? Meet J. Harlan Bretz. Here is Bretz, writing in 1928 after one of his field trips across Washington State in the Pacific Northwest of the US. No one with an eye for landforms can cross eastern Washington in vain without encountering and being impressed by the scabland. Like great scars marring the otherwise fair face of the plateau are these elongated tracts of bare or nearly bare black rock carved into mazes of buttes and canyons. Everybody on the plateau knows scabland. It interrupts the wheatlands, parceling them out into hill tracts less than 40 acres to more than 40 square miles in extent. One can neither reach them nor depart from them without crossing some part of the ramifying scabland. Aside from affording a scanty pasturage, scabland is almost without value. The popular name is an expressive metaphor. The scablands are wounds, only partially healed, great wounds in the epidermis of soil with which nature protects the underlying rock. With eyes only a few feet above the ground, the observer today must travel back and forth repeatedly and must record his observations mentally, photographically, by sketch and by map, before he can form anything approaching a complete picture. Yet long before the paper bearing these words is yellow, the average observer, looking down from the air as he crosses the region, will see almost at a glance the picture here drawn by piecing together the ground level observations of months of work. The region is unique. Let the observer take the wings of the morning to the uttermost parts of the earth. He will know her by its light. By 1928, Bretz was an experienced and highly credentialed field geologist. Born in 1882, he'd started his career as a high school biology teacher in Seattle, but spent most of his spare time exploring the geology of Puget Sound. Although he didn't have a geology degree at the time, he succeeded in getting several articles of his findings published in scientific journals. In 1911, he enrolled at the University of Chicago to pursue a doctorate in geology. He graduated summa cum laude in 1913 and immediately thereafter returned to Seattle, where he accepted a position as assistant professor of geology at the University of Washington. He had difficulties with the attitudes of other teaching staff there. He later described them as sticking them up. And by 1914, he was back at the University of Chicago, initially as an instructor, but soon afterwards as an assistant professor. The first field trip Brett made to the scablands of eastern Washington was in 1922. By this point, as a result of his earlier work, he was fully informed about the ice age in all its dimensions, and more aware than most other geologists that immense ice sheets, 2 miles deep, had covered North America for the best part of 100,000 years, until the ice melted dramatically somewhere between 15,000 and 11,000. Thus, when he saw huge numbers of errata, giant boulders that couldn't grow naturally in the area that had clearly been built into an iceberg, he was inclined to assume that they might have traveled through an iceberg, carried on some great glacial power. This impression was strengthened when he explored Old Peru and Nova Peru, gigantic tunnels gouged deeply in the earth, and visited the Quincy Basin at the southern end of that field, where he found the whole 600 square mile depression filled up to a depth of 400 feet with small particles of basalt debris. He couldn't help but wonder, where had all of this come from and why? Again, the answer that presented itself to him was a flood. Brett was back in the scablands in 1923 for 3 months of exploration, and it seems to have been during this field trip that his later views, namely that some spectacular hydrological event had begun in this region, then abruptly stopped, really began to take shape. In the November to December 1923 issue of the Journal of Geology, Bretz published a paper summarizing his findings. To understand the somewhat defensive tone of the paper, it's important to keep in mind the prevailing geological doctrine of the time, the principle known as uniformitarianism. This is the assumption that existing processes, acting as at present, are sufficient to account for all geological changes. Integral to it is the parallel assumption of gradualism, namely that the present is the key to the past, and that the rate of change observable today is an accurate guide to rates of change that prevailed in the past. Such ideas, which had acquired the status of an unchallengeable truth by Bretz's day, had themselves arisen from the necessary, indeed essential overthrow of the old religious belief in creationism and the notion that God whimsically intervened in the earth's history by ordaining cataclysms such as the biblical flood. In righteous opposition to these thoughts of supernatural creation and destruction, uniformitarianism seemed a profoundly rational response that saw only the forces of nature at work upon the earth over periods of millions, or indeed billions of years. Mountains had not been built overnight, had risen slowly, imperceptibly, over time. Likewise had fantastic geological features such as the Grand Canyon been eroded by the flow of rivers over many millions of years. Bretz was an eminently rational man, and certainly no religious dogmatist. Yet, as his biographer John Sunich said, notes, while hiking through the hot, dry, ragged world of the scablands, everything he had seen pointed not to a slow, uniform change over time, but to a catastrophe, a sudden release of colossal quantities of water that had washed away the loessial topsoil and then carved deeply into the basalt rock beneath.
I don't want to see you, Rob.
The problem was, where had all this water come from? It was well understood that at the margin of the North American ice sheets there must have been some melting, as one indeed sees at the edges of all glaciers today. But such melting could hardly explain the magnitude of the erosive changes that were visible in the field.
Hanging pretty good there,
As Bretz noted in his 1923 paper,
hi, Jenny.
The writer confesses that during 10 weeks of study
about
of the region,
75.
each newly
It's a-
examined
it's a
scabland tract
nice, comfy
reawakened a
temperature.
feeling of amazement that such huge streams could take origin from such small, marginal tracts
It's a nice,
of ice,
comfy temp.
or that such
Although
an
the clouds
enormous
look
amount
like
of
they got
erosion,
some rain
despite
in
high
potential.
gradients, could have resulted in the very brief times these streets existed. Not River Warren, nor the Chicago Outlet, not the Mohawk Channel, nor even Niagara Falls and Gorge itself approach the proportions of some of these scabland tracts in their canyons. From one of these canyons alone, Upper Grand Coulee, 10 cubic miles of basalt was eroded by its glacial stream. Concluding the paper, and moving towards the profoundly heretical and anti-uniformitarian idea that would soon get him into a great deal of trouble, namely that a single cataclysmic flood
I got a
unleashed
pretty
in a
good
very
signal
short
here
period had been
coming
responsible
out of
for
my
all the devastation.
cricket phone.
Rets wrote,
But
only
the Wi-Fi's
3,000
done messed
square
up
miles
today.
of the Columbia Plateau were swept by the glacial flood.
I gotta
The
look for
lowest
that
in
double
South
fucking
Carolina.
whammy piece.
More than
I think I've
2,000
got one
square
here.
miles of this area were left as barely eroded rock-cut channel floors, and nearly 1,000 square miles carried gravel deposits derived from the eroded basalt. It was a debacle which swept the
Fucking
Columbia
right there.
Plateau. In other words, as Bretz's biographer summarizes, the geologist now believed that the features he had documented could
Doesn't look
only
like
have
this
been
one's
created
loading
by
in.
a flood of unimaginable proportions, possibly the largest flood in the history of the world. The reaction of the geological establishment was one of stunned, embarrassed silence. To have strayed so far from the doctrine of uniformitarianism could only mean that Bretz must have gone mad. David Holt, professor emeritus of geology at the University of Montana, describes one of the lectures that Bretz gave, in which he expounded on the ideas in his 1923 paper. The geologists were aghast, in the same way that a room full of physicists would be upon hearing a colleague explain how
Human
he had made a
spoken.
perpetual motion machine out of
Just
old
had to
popsicle
check.
sticks. Physicists had all learned very early.
That's what I need. I need a double
perpetual
whammy,
motion
one that
machines,
sucks and
and no
fucking
properly educated
plugs
geologist
to
was
go in this
supposed to
thing.
traffic in catastrophes of any sort. Alt describes an old professor of
Just so happens I had one.
who had been a
Yeah,
student
pretty well a
sitting in the
tool.
audience when Bretz read his 1923 paper. It seems the professor did a hilarious impersonation of Bretz, pounding on the podium with both fists and stomping on the floor, as he used vivid language and gestures to convey his idea of a catastrophic flood to his horrified audience. Quite apart from the theatricals, Holt says, the geologists were shocked to hear Bretz invoke a sudden catastrophe to explain the scablands of eastern Washington. In their view,
All right, let me
this
go make
was a
sure.
reversion to the unscientific
Shit, I don't
thinking
know
of
if
some
that's
125 years before. To this day, most geologists consider it nothing less than heresy to invoke a catastrophic explanation for a geologic event. So Bretz stepped off the edge of a very long limb when he suggested that a great flood had eroded the
Hang
scablands.
on.
It made him a pariah
All right.
amongst geologists.
It's a
and
14
outcasts
outside
of the
there.
precincts of society. The outcomes
Shit.
did not give up, however. On the contrary, he doggedly continued with his research, bringing down ever more controversy on his head in the process, but believing that facts
Needs one that size on the outside.
The
I don't
preach
think
came
I
on the
have
12th
one.
of January 1927, when Bretz
That's
was
small.
ambushed by a lynch mob.
Just make a little tiny leaks like that shit. You can't even get a good dab out of it.
Society of Washington.
I might have a 9mm there to make one work.
Bretz was now filling his flood
Look.
with Spokane flood after the town of Spokane. He liked to refer to the ice sheet from which it had emerged as the Spokane ice sheet.
I don't think I
Neither
did.
term is useful.
I'm going to use
The
that
Spokane
thing.
ice sheet was effectively the southern part of that great late Pleistocene ice sheet now known as the Cordillera. He believed that large parts of it must have melted with extraordinary rapidity. The volume of water was very great, almost incredible. In spite of high gradients to draw it off, the pre-existing
Let me
bodies
go see if I got one
were inadequate,
in here.
and the flood spread widely in a complicated
Be right back.
vast amounts of force. W.C. Alden, Then the chief of Pleistocene geology with the profoundly conservative US Geological Survey objected to the idea that all the channels must have been developed simultaneously in a very short time, and took great offense at the tremendous amount of water postulated by Bretz. It seems to me impossible, Alden protested, that such part of the great ice fields as would have drained across the Columbia Plateau could, under any conditions, have yielded so much water as is called for in so short a time. He admitted that he'd never visited the scablands himself, but felt sure that a uniformitarian explanation was what was required. The problem would be easier if longer time and repeated floods could be allotted to do the work. James Gillooly, well known as an apostle of geologic gradualism, dismissed the notion of a single cataclysmic flood with words like preposterous, incompetent, and wholly inadequate. He found nothing in Bretz's evidence to exclude his own preferred solution, namely that multiple smaller floods had been involved, and that these would have been of the order of magnitude of the present Columbians, or at most a few times as large. Likewise, G.R. Mansfield doubted that so much work could be done on basalt in so short a time. The scablands seem to me better explained as the effects of persistent ponding and overflow of marginal glacial waters, which changed their position or their places of outlet from time to time through a somewhat protracted period. O. E. Meinzer was obliged to confess that the erosion features of the region are large and bizarre, but he too preferred a gradualist explanation. Before a theory that requires a seemingly impossible quantity of water is fully accepted, every effort should be made to account for the existing features without employing so violent an assumption. I believe the existing features can be explained by assuming normal streamwork of the ancient Columbia River. In summary, not a single voice was raised in support of Bretz, and there was much patronizing dismissal of his outrageous hypothesis of a single large flood. In particular, the massed geologists honed in on what they clearly believed was the fatal flaw in the case for a sudden and overwhelming cataclysm, namely that Bretz had failed to identify a convincing source for his floodwaters. Bretz replied that he saw no logic in this, since lack of a documented source for the flood did not prove that there had been no flood. I believe my interpretation of channel scabland should stand or fail on the scabland phenomena themselves.
Yeah, they don't
He was, I
have
said,
one.
as sensitive as anyone else to adverse criticism, and had no desire to invite attention simply by advocating extreme evil.
So I'm not repairing
He
the rig
himself had
today.
repeatedly been driven
Bummer.
down the verge
It's a. I need the one with the one that fits on the inside too. Most of them don't have the one that fits on the outside and the inside. This is a 19. It needs to be 14. Big difference going in the piece. But it looks like what I need. I had to resize it. I was like, oh, wait a minute. That can't be right. I gotta have a 9mm fit in the 14. Because you got
this accumulation of compelling
fucking 2.5mm thickness coming around on the
not by
inside
intuition,
on each
not by
one.
reference to received wisdom, but only by
Oh, well.
principles of the scientific method. Ideas without precedent.
I can pick one of those up at
generally looked on as
Harbor
this
Freight
thing,
next
and
time
they are
we're in
shocked
town.
that their conceptions of an orderly world are challenged. A hypothesis
Fixes down still
earnestly
warm.
defended begets emotional reaction, which makes
So I intend to
powerful
come back
hypothesis.
here
But if such
after I hit
hypotheses
Window Rock
outrage prevailing
and
laws of
Tempe and
thought,
all that.
the view of
Mosey back up
anarchists
this
may
way
also
before I go out
be
east.
On the other hand, geology is plagued with extravagant ideas.
So I can make nice big pieces out of her kiln.
They are worse than
I like
outrageous
that.
hypotheses, for they lead nowhere. The writer's Spokane flood hypothesis
Speaking of which, let's
may
work on
belong
this
to
little
the
guy.
latter class, but it cannot be
I'll
placed
make its mouthpiece.
unless errors of information.
God, I can't wait to get Twitch running. Graham
And
Hancock's
this was
voice is
the
killing me.
all the criticisms of Bretz, both before
Although
and
he's
after
got some good information. He leaves out a lot of the fucking
didn't like what he
good
had to say.
information.
It flew in the face of their gradualist reference frame, and they regarded it as a heresy that must be gently but firmly stamped out. In the final analysis, however, they couldn't disprove his science, only disapprove of it, which is a very different thing. The heart of the matter remained Bretz's assertion that the ice cap had melted precipitously, and his inability to propose a mechanism that could have brought about such melting. He himself, as noted, did not regard this as a significant stumbling block, but his critics did. Over the years, therefore, in attempts to appease them, he several times, reluctantly, proposed two possible solutions. These were some sort of radical, short-lived climate change on the one hand, or on the other, an episode of volcanic activity beneath the ice cap. He admitted of the former, however, that no such climatic change is recorded elsewhere, and the rapidity demanded seems impossible. While of the latter, he observed that nothing has been found in the literature to suggest Pleistocene volcanism in the area which was drained across the Columbia Plateau. Interestingly, by the time Bretz faced his hostile peers in Washington, he was already aware of, but had dismissed, the very explanation for cataclysmic flooding that would much later be taken up by the geological establishment and open the door to the universal acceptance of his evidence that prevails today. In his outline for his January 1927 presentation, he wrote, "Both Mr. Alden and Mr. Pardee have suggested that I consider the sudden draining of a glacial lake to account for the flood." Mr. Pardee, in a 1925 letter to Bretz, specifies Lake Missoula, which is the only one of any magnitude known in the region that might have functioned. Eventually, in the 1940s, Bretz would indeed embrace a sudden draining of glacial Lake Missoula as the source of his flood. But the reason why he did not do so in 1927 is important, and as we shall see, of the greatest relevance to the evolving debate about what exactly happened in North America at the end of the Ice Age. In brief, Bretz's view in 1927, as his biographer explained, was that the volume of Lake Missoula might not have been adequate to form the scablands. It would run the flood for only 2 weeks, read the handwritten comment by Bretz in this section of his outline. In March 1930, Bretz published a brief abstract in the Bulletin of the Geological Society of America. The abstract was titled Lake Missoula and the Spokane Flood. In it, Bretz wrote that this lake had first been named and described by the geologist J.T. Pardee, whose letter on the subject he received in 1925, that it stood more than 4,000 feet above sea level, and that it was at least 2,100 feet deep. Without going into any detail, he noted that the lake had been held in place by an ice dam, and that 70 miles to the southwest, along the western arm of the Purcell Trench of the Spokane Valley, are the easternmost heads of the Scabland Channel. If a bursting of the dam occurred, water could only escape along this 70-mile stretch. By 1932, Bretz had warmed further to the idea that Lake Missoula could be the culprit behind his flood, although he felt that issues concerning the hypothetical ice dam and its proposed cataclysmic failure remained to be worked out. At this point in his life, however, he seemed ready to move on and was to devote most of the next decade to other completely different geological puzzles. Then in 1940, he was invited to speak on his scablands theory at a meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science being held in Seattle. He declined the invitation, saying that his views and evidence were already in print. But the event turned out to be a seminal one. J.T. Pardee was there and presented a paper on his work on glacial Lake Missoula, making public for the first time his long-held conclusion that there had been a failure of an ice dam and that the entire lake had drained catastrophically and most likely quite dramatically. Curiously, Pardee did not connect his Missoula findings to Bretz's own long-standing and well-known case about the creation of the channeled scablands by a catastrophic flood. But much later, Bretz would write, "He never said, at least in print, anything about the final deposition of this vigorous discharge. I do believe, however, that he was generously leaving that to me." In the process of making the most of what had been left of him, Bretz abandoned his single cataclysmic flood model in favor of one more palatable to his opponents. There were several floods he was eventually to write in 1959. The theory is elastic enough to take care of that. In the same year, Bretz was presented with the Neil Milner Award in honor of his exceptional contributions to earth sciences. A few years later, in 1965, Bretz's transformation from pariah to poster boy seemed complete. The International Union for Quaternary Research organized a field trip to the Columbia Plateau for many former critics of the catastrophic flood theory. The group traversed the full length of Grand Coulee, part of the Quincy Basin, and much of the Palouse Snake Scabland Divide. At the end of the trip, the participants, humbled by what they had seen and satisfied as to the source of the flood damage in glacial Lake Missoula, sent Bretz a telegram of greetings and salutations. The telegram closed with the words, "We are all." "Be assured," wrote Bretz, "that after 30 years and 30 papers in self-defense and more than 30 people who vigorously denied my theory, it did my heart good like medicine." The final accolade came in 1979, when Bretz, by then aged 96, received the Penrose Medal, the Geological Society of America's highest accolade. After this award, he told his son, "All my enemies are dead, so I have no one to gloat over." Bretz went on to his next great adventure, aged 98 years, on the 3rd of February 1981. Gradualism draws the teeth of Bretz's cataclysm. So, all seemed well. The evidence of a land scoured by cataclysmic deluge could not be denied. The timing had been set, perhaps not precisely, but at any rate somewhere in the last millennia of the Ice Age, between 15,000 and 11,000 years ago. The source of the deluge had been tracked down to glacial Lake Missoula, and the crunch point of whether there had been just one gigantic flood, which Bretz's honed instincts as a field geologist had originally suggested, or multiple floods, as his gradualist colleagues preferred, had been conceded with reference to the elasticity of his theory and an allowance of several floods. It becomes clear in later papers published by Bretz that he was willing to accept that up to 8 floods had occurred. This was undoubtedly a concession to gradualism. 8 smaller floods, politely spread out over a period of some thousands of years, being more palatable to those of a uniformitarian persuasion, i.e. to most geologists then and now, than a single humongous event of great violence that occurred suddenly, did massive damage, and was over and done with in about 3 months. Nonetheless, Bretz remained a catastrophist at heart. Peter R. Baker of the Department of Hydrology and Water Resources at the University of Arizona notes in his study, The Spokane Flood Debates, that while Bretz did indeed extensively modify his original hypothesis, there was a lingering suspicion that one was dealing with an unusual exception to a general rule. Bretz himself had claimed the unique assemblage of forms described as the channeled scablands records a unique episode in Pleistocene history. Special causes seem clearly indicated. In other words, regardless of any concessions, what is referred to here are causes that were still unique and special enough to be described as catastrophic, and that did not undermine the conclusion that it was a debacle which swept the Columbia Plateau. It is surely significant that in his last published work, a note he wrote to the Geological Society of America in 1979, accepting its highest accolade, the Penrose Medal, that Bretz took the opportunity to drive this point home. "Perhaps," he wrote, "I can be credited with reviving and demystifying legendary catastrophism and challenging a too rigorous uniformitarianism." What Bretz, the catastrophist and challenger of uniformitarianism, could not have known, however, was that once he had invited the vampire of gradualism through the door, it would not be satisfied with the compromise that he had tried to strike, but would keep on remorselessly sucking the blood out of any notion that what had happened in the Channel Islands had been any sort of debacle at all. Thus, as the years have gone by, and new generations of gradualist scholars have taken their places at universities around the world, the 8 floods that were first allowed to modify Bretz's single cataclysm have steadily increased in number, to a dozen, then to more than 20, then to 35, then to about 40, and finally, in recent papers, to as many as 90 or more. The most current opinion, summarizes Vic Baker, is that there were about 80 floods that all occurred within a period of 2,500 years, roughly between 15,000 years ago and 12,000 years ago, possibly at regular intervals. 80 floods in 2,500 years works out at one flood approximately every 31 years, thus
Glenn's
doing
got
away
one.
with any need for a single exceptional cataclysm and accounting for the horrendous mess of the Channel Scablands.
He named it
by the
Puff.
accumulated effects of a rather regular, predictable, essentially gradualist series of events.
It definitely
Still,
delivers.
from uniformitarian
I don't know how he does it
outburst
dry.
floods from ice dam
Most of my
glacier
dragons you can
still
actually put
occur
water in because the
They happen
arm comes
regularly
up
in Iceland, for example,
and
where
the
they
elbow in
form
there is a natural perk.
a term that has been adopted for them worldwide. and that I will
But Glenn chooses to smoke it dry. That's way too much volume for me. That'd kill me.
Sweden and North America. As geology professor David
But I'm a
points out,
lightweight.
several glacially dammed lakes in Alaska and northern British Columbia are prone to episodes of very fast drainage. These events usually occur in summer when a fast snowmelt raises the level of the lake. The ice dam that held glacial Lake Missoula probably floated and broke during the summer for the same reason. In this way, the uniformitarian doctrine that the present is the key to the past, and that the rate of change observable today is an accurate guide to rates of change that prevailed in the past, has quietly reasserted itself. And Bretz's disturbing flood evidence has been explained away as nothing very much to worry about after all. The scholars have also rather cleverly contrived to have their cake and eat it, on the one hand giving Bretz a medal, and proclaiming that they are all catastrophists now. On the other, quietly transmuting Bretz's catastrophe into the sort of thing that one sees every summer in Alaska and British Columbia. This is all very reassuring, of course, but suppose that Bretz's original insight was right, and that what happened in North America at the end of the Ice Age really was a sudden cataclysmic flood, something unprecedented and unmatched since. Suppose it really was a debacle. Back to Bretz. Randall Carlson is quite certain that it was indeed a debacle, one that unfolded on an almost unbelievable scale, and has spent the last 20 years trekking back and forth across the Channel Scablands, asking local geologists difficult questions that no one else seems to have considered, and building a formidable case. The sort of case, I suspect, that Bretz would be making if he were still with us and at the height of his powers. I first met Randall in 2006. The North American Ice Age floods were amongst the subjects we discussed, and I was startled to discover that he didn't accept the ice dam theory at all, and regarded glacial Lake Missoula as a huge diversion, an easy solution that panders to uniformitarian prejudices and has led geologists away from the truth. In the years that followed, we corresponded and we bumped into each other. I was enormously impressed by his depth of knowledge, by his field experience, and by the
Thanks, Glenn.
new insights his
Cheers.
research seemed to offer into the mysterious events that brought the Ice Age to an end. I found we shared a particular and growing interest in the Younger Dryas, that return to full glacial conditions that began suddenly 12,800 years ago, just when the world seemed to be warming up, and that ended equally suddenly 1,200 years later. During this peculiar episode, certain Stone Age hunter-gatherer peoples such as the Clovis culture of North America vanished from the archaeological record, and there were mass extinctions of animal species.
Yeah, I went
so
through all
plainly
those
something unusual was going on.
pipe
Yet no
raids through the
uniformitarian
nation.
or
I
gradual
was in
explanations have ever been offered. Moreover,
fucking West Palm when they came in Lester's. We'd already removed everything the night before. We saw a fucking lady and come in the next day. She had DA on her back. And she had her purse up over her badge. She was looking for a bomb. I think they sent in a rookie, and she was very disappointed when she didn't get her first bus. We sent him down the road. Go look somebody else.
A long period
Hi,
of
Renee, how are
uninterrupted
you?
warming that the world had just passed through, and that had greatly intensified according to some studies between 15,000 years ago.
Went to the gardening side of the industry.
Was instantly
You know, you got to work a little bit less.
everywhere by a global code.
But I love blowing the glass, man. I've been doing it since '93.
In many ways mysterious and unexplained, This was an almost unbelievably fast climatic reversion, from conditions that are calculated to have been warmer and wetter than today's 13,000 years ago, to conditions that were colder and drier than those of the last glacial maximum just a few hundred years later. From that moment, around 12,800 years ago, it was as though an enchantment of ice had gripped the
Yeah,
earth.
those are fun.
In many areas that had been
Occasionally.
approaching a terminal meltdown, full glacial conditions were restored with breathtaking
Might do another
rapidity.
one someday.
And all the gains that had
Maybe.
been made since the LGM, last glacial maximum,
I don't think
1,000
Vegas is
years
going to be
ago,
around for
were
Christmas
simply
this year.
stripped away. Temperatures fell back on
Yeah, I remember Jerome, that motherfucker. He used to
half as
cordon
brutal
off his
decline,
little
possibly
section and
occurring
shit.
within a decade.
That was funny. He never had
The
anything
polar
real
front
special
of the
either.
Atlantic
That was
redescended
like,
to the level of California
the hell was he
in
cordoning
Spain,
his shit off
and
for?
glaciers re-advanced in high mountain chains. With respect to temperature, the setback to full glacial conditions was nearly complete. For human populations at the time, in
Yeah, I
many
thought that
except
was
the most
funny.
accidentally favored parts of the world,
Yeah, the
sudden
bong.
and inexplicable plunge
Some of the shit they got
into
going on
extreme
nowadays,
was
man, is like,
devastating.
fuck, dude. You look at it, it's
The
like,
sense
fuck.
of mystery
What Jerome used to
and
cordon his shit
mythology
off.
around Younger Dryas continued to intrigue me,
But that's
encouraging me
cool.
to read up on it and try to
Some
understand
people
it
get
better.
gimmicky.
I recall a number of conversations and email exchanges around 2006 that
Yeah,
focused
when
on
you're
this topic.
competing with China,
It
you
became
gotta do
increasingly
everything you
obvious to
can, I
me
guess. So,
that the Younger Dryas had been a
and I
global
used
catastrophe
I use heavy
that
wall
stood
and
at the
everything.
epicenter of that
God's sake.
and I decided it was time to see the evidence. of it.
I'm
On impulse, I invited him
unstable.
to join me on a field trip.
Yeah, I use
It took
heavy
more
wall
than
with
a year to
everything.
find a time
I
that
can't
worked
stand
for both our
medium or
schedules, but finally,
thin wall
in
shit.
September
It melts too
2014,
quick.
I met Randall in
I
Portland,
like a
Oregon,
big glob of
and took
stuff
off east and north into neighboring
when
Washington
it
State
goes.
to explore
Nice
the
thick
scablands
shit
on
coming
the
down
open
around your
bed
collar.
four-wheel drive we drove. Chapter 4: Journey through the Scablands.
His stuff was all also right side
We're
out,
on
just
a
raped and
2,500
spun on a
4,000
lathe.
kilometer road trip from Portland, Oregon to Minneapolis, Minnesota. The journey would be
I
short,
tend to like
through
hand
the
blown a little bit
but we're
better.
stopping and diverting into coulees and river valleys that are around buttes and up the sides of mountains.
55 millimeter, yeah, that's the hard stuff to turn by hand. I go up to 44 sometimes when I'm making something big. I was gonna get me a piece of 44, but I found those 5 pieces of 32 on deal, and I was like, "Fuck, I'm buying those."
Fourth day, when we reached dry forest in the middle of the extraordinary scar of the landscape,
44 makes really nice tea mugs.
picture is
I
becoming
mean, like big,
the
fucking
ground under our
nice
feet
ones.
is ancient
Full.
black basalt,
I made big.
covered with a thin layer of
Was
topsoil.
it last one I
Basalt,
blew in?
extruded
like
by volcanic
09, I
eruptions
think.
between 17 million and 6 million years ago,
Uh,
covers much of the
Compassion
Colombian
Cup
Plateau,
out there.
and in some places is
In,
2,000 meters,
Sacramento.
6,600 feet.
I made a big fucking
Not in Grand
coffee pot.
because here it's as if some capricious
A full
force,
pot,
perhaps
not
even
just a
hand
mug.
God
I made
himself,
with the spout.
has
And
seized a
everything.
giant chisel with a blade miles wide,
That was
plunged
out
it
of
violently
44.
into the earth, and
Fucking
gouged out a
huge.
sheer-sided gash hundreds of feet deep and almost
I like
6
that
feet
stuff.
wide.
It's like driving a
6 meters
Cadillac
long.
where
The
32 is
chisel,
more like a
however, was not made
little
of
sports
steel,
car.
but of immense quantities of rushing, turbulent, debris-laden water that flowed for a few weeks only. The water of Bretz's flood. Grand Coulee, he wrote.
But yeah, I'm using Cymax today. I got 2 more tubes. I cut them down in half because I don't think I'm going to get to them
But for the war,
before I start packing the shit up
glacial
in the
river,
RV
3
tomorrow.
miles in minimum width,
So,
spilled south
because that's basically what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. Like I said, is just packing up
The
a
stream
lot of my
descended nearly
shop.
1,000 feet on
I intend to leave some of it here. I mean,
Such a
I'm coming
situation
back.
is unparalleled.
I'll be
even in
coming
this
back
region.
to Riggs. So
Suddenly
I
initiated
like doing her
hurricane.
repairs for her.
At
So
least 10
if anybody got any
cubic
glass
miles
needs
of
repaired, send it down. I'll fix that
Brett
shit.
prefers here only for the northern or upper part of Grand. Same amount
They've got their
of
website
was
up
also
too.
extended
Yeah, I
to
was
the
looking at it today. Fuck, man, Chad did all that shit.
Making our way here
And like I said, you're
Front
lucky if you
back
get Chad
back,
here because he'll walk
south
you
of
around
the
the whole
southern
goddamn
end
shop.
of
Be like, yeah, we got this, we
to
got
see
that,
all
we got the
that
other thing.
basalt excavated was done.
Man, I'm having a blast. What can I say? I'm 50 fucking,
Disturbing,
almost 4 now.
disturbing
My kid just turned
because I could
18.
see in all directions
And,
across the prairie. They scattered countless
I'm
thousands,
blowing
more
glass.
likely millions,
What
of
can I say?
jagged,
I like doing it.
broken basalt
It's good for
compounds.
gas money.
Some about the size of a family car, some smaller, down to the size of a football, and many larger. Everything was reduced to rubble, Randall Carson explained to me as we stood there in the midst of the fan. And that's what you're seeing. This rubble was part of the former world. The former world? Yes. The antediluvian world. And what's lying
Alright.
here on the surface is just a fraction of what the flood flushed out of Grand Coulee.
I'm gonna rock on and put this thing together.
Hundreds of feet deep.
Here a second. Let me see
From
what's
the
going on.
Ephrata fan, we drove north on Washington State.
Some
Route
kind of cricket
17
message,
into
maybe.
lower Grand Coulee. Its sheer, forbidding basalt cliffs rearing up on either side of us. The grey rain clouds above reflected dark.
Death toll on the hurricane went up.
Blue Lake and Heart Lake.
That's not good
Now
news.
we've reached dry falls at the head of lower Grand Coulee. And as we get out of the truck, Randall reminds my wife Santa to bring her camera.
Yeah, they talking like it was tsunami damage and fucking the swell took the Gulf out
Meet Randall Carson.
instead of surged
You
it.
may be too young to remember the 1977 TV series called The Life and Times of Grizzly
That kind of
Adams,
shit just doesn't
but you can
normally
always Google
happen.
it if you weren't here. The eponymous hero, a tough woodsman played by actor Dan Haggerty, was a big, bluff, bearded sort of fellow.
That thing's,
And Randall Carlson,
I don't know if you've been paying attention, but you get on Law School, Earth Interactive, it should like load up on the surface air.
But he
Pretty
spent
sure
most
it
of his life
does.
in rural Minnesota, and his
But
voice still
let me
carries the
check.
quirky undertones of Scandinavian and German.
If you notice that fucking swirl above Iceland is
He grew up on the
huge,
shores of
man.
Schmidt Lake, one of tens of thousands of small meltwater lakes spread across Minnesota and Wisconsin. And he used to go fishing there as a boy.
It's been sitting there
Perched
for
on a
months.
huge boulder that he
Ain't nobody
often
talking about
saw
that shit.
Glacier erratic. A boulder quarried from bedrock and carried by an advancing
How you
glacier,
gonna have
perhaps many
Earth?
hundreds of miles from its source, to be deposited in a location far removed from its origin. Today,
This
half a
map here
century
tells
after his
everything.
boyhood,
God, I can't
he
wait to
says
get on
that the
Twitch
Midwestern landscapes of his
so we can look at this shit
left an
together.
indelible imprint on his psyche. From these early experiences, I entered into a sort of dialogue with the earth.
YouTube just don't let you share the screen. Oh, it's taking forever to
This
download.
dialogue
Here it
has
is.
involved thousands of
Yeah,
hours
it's
spent in the
surface.
field, traversing and studying a wide variety of landscapes, along with thousands of hours in the study of various sciences related in one way or another to the goal of understanding this extraordinary.
Yeah, that thing over Iceland's still there.
We are engaged
And
in
that-
this ongoing human experience.
It's sucking that fucking hurricane up
It
into
is
its
a
tail.
fearsomely dynamic planet, one that has undergone
And that's
profound
part of a
changes
bigger
on scale
clockwise
far
swirl
exceeding
that I'm looking
anything
at.
within recent times. In
But
fact,
yeah, that one in
I now
fucking
realize
Iceland
that
is
what we
fucking
think of as
nuts.
history
It's just still
is
sitting
merely the
right
record
over
of
the
human
island
events
eyes.
that have
Right,
transpired
well,
since the last great
country
planetary
eyes.
catastrophe.
It's an island.
I also understand that the imprint of these catastrophes is to be found.
It goes
all
from
over
like
us,
what
virtually
UK
every
to
environment.
fucking Greenland.
And we are just beginning to be able to perceive
thing's
and
huge.
decipher the evidence.
It's definitely fucking tropical storm. I mean, it just keeps getting stronger and stronger.
Geology.
crazy.
Catastrophist geology. And as those of us who have attended one of his lectures will attest, he knows more about it than pretty much anyone else you are ever likely to meet. He has gleaned his
Geoengineering
knowledge from a
watch.
vast reading of the scientific literature, and
You
as he
know.
says above, from thousands of hours of field work. To me, this sort of in-depth
Geoengineering's a
on-the-ground
thing, and yes, they
miles
spray.
walked through the wilderness, the years of dedicated
Aerosols.
library research mean far more
Stratospheric
than
aerosol
most
injections
people.
for solar radiation
Randall is not a
management,
geologist
to be
and does
specific.
not claim to be a geologist, but his
But they
grasp of the
said that
subject is
they,
worth a dozen PhDs.
They're doing it to keep
And
these
right now,
transformers
we
from
stand on a
popping.
sort of concrete field with waist-high fencing.
Or wait a minute, no, they didn't say that. They said they was trying to keep away global warming. That's what they said.
There's a chill wind this late September.
I said they're trying to keep these transformers from fucking
A
popping.
geologist.
Because that's what we do. It's not a good trade-off.
Ever been to Niagara Falls?
Well, we're seeing microwave.
But you see,
But
you have a sense
it's
of the place.
definitely for
I suppose so,
something
yes.
bigger than us.
Okay.
You can look at
So just a
the
guess.
this wall
Which is
and tell that's not
indicates the
coming from CERN. That's not coming from
Trifles or Niagara?
Earth.
I'm thinking it's a trick
Go
question.
look at this one.
Randall, being a Minnesotan, is of course compelled to ask
He's talking
questions.
about after the
I
fact.
look out
And,
at the natural aptitude.
oh, look,
It's a long
this
way
is
down,
fucking
and a
Geo.
long way
I've been
across.
telling you this is
A
coming
couple
for
of circular
since
lakes
14.
of
So
rainwater, overgrown with reeds,
believe him, you can
decorate
know
the
what's
base of the
going on
towering
either
horseshoe
way.
of sheer cliffs confronting, over which it is absolutely
Because
obvious
there's
huge
no way in
concrete
physics
walls
anybody
across
could
the
explain to me
I
how
haven't moved
anything
to
on
the
Earth
which are 50
is
kilometers
affecting our
away, but I
magnetosphere
did spend a day of amazement at
the way
Victoria
this is
Falls in
going
South
on over
Africa,
here.
and they're 108
It's definitely not
the classic horseshoe shape
from
of Niagara.
Earth that we're
We're
seeing
seeing
this
all the pictures
happen.
as repeated at Victoria Falls.
It's affecting
And
the
here's the
human and
same
everything.
horseshoe shape
And there ain't no
Washington State in the walls,
geoengineering that can
preserved in the
squeeze
dry
the
fossil
ionosphere,
of an ancient cataract.
which is the only thing that would
Dry
cause the
Falls
fucking
is
human
bigger than
spike.
Niagara, I say, sounding more confident than I feel. Okay, good so far, but how much bigger?
This is
Twice as
simple
big?
physics.
I hazard a guess. Not bad, Randall says.
Not to
But
mention
actually,
the
Dry
moon's
Falls is
doing a
close to 3
cartwheel
times
every
as
night.
high as Niagara,
Raises
more
like
than
that.
6 times as wide.
Orion's on his back.
See how the cliffs are scalloped there?
The winter hunter's been rising on his back.
The Dry Falls horseshoe is in fact 2 horseshoes side by side, one to the east, one to the west. Well, Niagara would easily fit into just half of the eastern horseshoe, and its rim would be almost
And
250 feet.
we've got videos of two shadows, and that
Look there.
microwave
Eastern
transmitter
side of the horseshoe.
is
Where
in the
there's a gap
sky,
and then a high, narrow
causing
fin of cliffs running
the
south.
second shadow
That's Umatilla Rock, he
throughout
says,
the day.
indicating the fin. It would have been a kind of island at the peak of
There's
the
an
world.
ultraviolet sun. You ever see a black light when the disco lights come on, the house lights
When the
come on?
flood came
That
through
black
here,
light
water
is still
was more
on.
than 500
You
feet.
can't see it.
It would have overturned
It might
the
change a little bit of your
and the falls
perspective.
themselves.
How about
And
two
right here where we're
rainbows?
standing by,
You talk about two
150
rainbows and why one of them's a
So
completely
if
different
I'd been able to
spectrum
stand here,
than the other one.
which you
It's
would
more
have,
of a red and fucking orange and yellow fucking rainbow.
if I'd been
That
able to
ain't
stand here, I take it I
red,
wouldn't
orange,
have
yellow,
seen
green,
sheer
blue,
sheet of
indigo,
water
and violet.
bursting over the lip of the
That's a
falls and
different
crashing down
spectrum.
upon the feet.
That's
No,
EM
because
field.
that was
That's
happening
court
far beneath the
empirical.
surface. What you would have seen at this point would have looked
Two
more like a whirling,
fucking
chilling,
light
sloping
sources.
current, with some
Completely
kind of
different
abrupt
spectrum
above
light
or gradient
sources.
in it than an actual
Now,
waterfall. But all
if
the work
the
that
other
went
sun
into
was
causing
as
rock
bright as
slowly
ours,
move
like
on
a
the
white
surface.
light,
What do you mean
it would
by
be
the
harder
work
to
on the
prove
rock?
because you'd have two fucking
Water is
same
coming
rainbow
through here
spectrums
in
hanging
enormous
out in the
quantities
sky
and
when it
horribly
rains.
fast,
But
running
when
at
you're
up to
looking
70
at
miles
two
an hour
different
all
colored
summers.
rainbows in the
And
sky,
you've got to realize
that's
that
coming
visitors
from
from
two different
It's
spectrums
more
of
like a
light.
slurry of thick mud. And
It's
those
just
whole
simple
forests
physics.
torn up by their roots that are whirling around in it.
That's not even
It's
an opinion or a
just beneath the
theory.
surface.
That's
And
just
down at the bottom, there's a huge rumbling
that's a fact.
debris, almost like the ones we saw dumped all over the Ephrata Flat.
And a lot of
This
these
whole mass is
cats
rushing and tumbling and
that
plunging
claim
across us.
they're telling you the truth are really missing some
Yes, that's the
big
best way to describe it. Like
scientific
giant fingers
fact
plucking out blocks
that
of
is
basalt
visible
bedrock,
for each and every
ripping
human
them
being
out,
on the
dragging
planet.
them into the current and sweeping
And
them
it
down
makes
the
you
stream.
wonder who they're trying
That's
to
how the
help.
erosive work is done.
Good NASA
Randall
and
gestures again at the scallop
and fucking
horseshoe
NATO.
cliffs. But what
NATO
we see
came
from
out,
here
told
is
the
less than
world a
half
couple
the
years
picture.
ago, we're going to start
Looking
using these
airplane looking
things
down,
called
we see
stratospheric
another set
aerosol
of horseshoes,
injections.
even bigger
Now I
than
know
the
they've
ones
been
over
using them for
east,
years. I helped
wrapping
develop
round
the
beyond
fucking
the
shit out in
So with
flight
all that
ops and
taken
shit.
into
We used to
account,
use it
what's
for
the total
communications in
extent
the
of
Navy in the fucking
about
80s.
3.5 miles.
But
That was where it had
they
got
so-called
to.
discovered it could heat
God
the
only knows
fucking
what would have ended up
ionosphere and
being
steer
where it will be
storms,
today.
etc.,
Flood
etc.
continued
Well, that's
for
fine.
a couple of weeks.
But when you have
I don't
microwaves
understand.
entering
Indications
into
are
the
that the flood only
situation,
lasted a matter
that
of
all of a
weeks.
sudden
Throughout
makes your
that time, the
harps
falls were
completely
constantly
obsolete.
breaking waterfalls.
Now, I don't know if he's explained this to you or not,
Yes, all
but you
falls
know how
at different
they're,
rates depending on the amount and
there's
force of the water flowing over.
aerosols
They pluck at the
used to
bedrock and
roll
twist
out
it
nice and
each to the
smooth,
upstream.
like
Take
just
Niagara, for
kind of like a
example.
little
It's
scroll in the
retreated
sky
7
and just
miles
spread
in the
out.
last 12,000 years.
Well, they don't do that
That's
anymore, do they?
free compared with what
They do
happened
a
here,
ripple
where the retreat was about
where
30
you can see the
miles, full
microwaves in
length
them.
of lower ground coulee
Well,
in less than a
that's
month. So
that
the rate of
completely
erosion
makes
is
an
incredibly fast.
extremely
Yes,
long wave
thousands of
frequency
times faster than Niagara,
obsolete
because
because
of the
it needs a
incredible
flat
amount of
surface
force
to
of the
bounce
water.
off of to heat
Dry
that
Falls
ionosphere.
was the greatest waterfall
So
that's
HARP
ever
is
existed
made
on Earth.
obsolete as soon as you see those
And all
ripples
that water
in their
supposed to
shit.
come out of Glacier Lake, Missouri,
The only thing they're doing
well,
at this point in time
is beer.
is being able to keep the
That's the
electric
theory.
grid on, so people are really
Erratic
distracted from what's
Randall doesn't
going
buy the
on.
graduate
Much like
theory
everybody
that multiple
believes
entries
that
were
this
presumed through
the
multiple
food
equations
prices
as
and
being
the
making more
occasional
breaking
shortages
again
is
ice
from X, Y,
can
or
account for
Z.
the evidence on
I've told
He
exactly
doesn't dispute that the glaciers
why
really
this is going to
existed,
happen well
or that
before
there
it
were
began.
outburst floods
I
prior,
even began the
but he's
date,
convinced it
hit
was
it
never
on the
anywhere
nose the
near
day
big
Trump
enough to
signed
account for all the
that
cataclysmic
peacetime
features of the
acquisition.
giant
I hit
scablands,
that on
like
the nose.
Jehol and
And
Brett's
then 2
and
weeks later,
Winkle's.
Wendy's had to
He
stop
believes
selling
that
beef in
one
certain
sudden,
places
short-lived,
because the
totally
shortages showed up
exceptional
exactly
flood of
the
truly
day I said
immense
they would.
proportions was the real culprit.
Um, I
On the
don't
other
know
hand, Randall
anybody
takes
else
really
that's
erratic
called
hunting to
the
explain why. We pull off Interstate 97 onto the Waterville Plateau
anything
and
like I
drive
have
across rugged,
so
rolling country
accurately.
where
So I
occasional
don't know if
green
you've
and
been
yellow
to my
fields
bit shoot or
intermingle
not
with
and
wild
looked.
moorland, too poor
But
ever
all
to
that
hunt on.
stuff I said about the
Pretty soon
current
we start
situation,
seeing huge
about
clusters,
how they were
flocks,
going to lock
packs,
us down,
crowds of giant
what they were going
boulders,
to
all
use,
of ominous
the
black
very
basalt,
symptoms
all
of what
alien
would
to this
happen,
landscape. And I know
step
enough
by
land
step,
to recognize
more
them.
deadly, all that.
As ice caps move and spread, they snatch up and change
Long
and
before
transport
anybody ever
huge
did
rocks
anything,
that then remain locked
and
within
put it
until the
on
ice
bit shoot
melts and drops its slow.
because they
What happened here?
took down
This is
channels.
actually called Boulder
I
Pond
used to
and is
sit.
recognized as a
Hey,
national natural
hi.
landmark.
You
It's
might
a
be
different
new.
aspect of the same
I used to
process.
work for Senator
When
Jim
the Ice Age
Davis.
flood came pouring down,
I helped
on
author
plateau,
I did the research on
it was
all the
carrying thousands
fucking
of icebergs.
Davis hemp bill
Icebergs as big as
that
oil tankers with house-sized
was
boulders
voted
frozen
in
inside.
42 to
When
2 in
they
North
bumped up
Carolina and
against
forced
hillsides, he
legal
points to a distant ridge of
legislation
granite, colossal
federally
boulders
on
strewn
him.
across it. The icebergs grounded
I was
and
told
stuck there. Eventually, after the flood had
what was going to
subsided,
happen
they melted out, leaving the boulders where
and
they
offered
sit
a
to this
bunker
day,
for my
strewn
son
all
and
over the
I.
top of the plateau beyond the ridge,
I'm
and
not
carved in
guessing
the
at
hillside for 20
it's
miles going north. But that ridge must be
we have
what,
an enemy coming
800, maybe
that's
900
already
feet
here,
above us, I observe. Exactly.
and
Which
that's
tells
why
us
we're
that the
seeing this
water was at
crazy
least that
weather
deep.
go off.
Or rather, not simply water, but a sludge slurry. And as the flood starts to subside, the slurry
It's
again.
used for
We're
live
looking
shows
for
instead of the
wreckage
information for
We get
a
back
couple
onto
of years.
Interstate 97, heading south along the west bank.
We have 3 suns. One is a
west on
massive
97
blue
towards Lake
sun. It is our
50
original
miles long
sun,
and never a mile and a half wide, lying in the bottom.
and we have a red sun. It's pretty big too. It's the one that usually does the micronovas. It's the one that puts the iridium down in the rock, and it's the one on the other side of our sun. It's a little bit darker, but it's more visible to your eye than the blue sun, which is more powerful than either one of those and bigger. um, However, the red sun is destined to grow as big and bright as its father sun, which is the blue sun. Um, it's the one that micronovas when it sucks our energy out of our sun as it comes up from behind it. Now, they were documenting the same thing in Peru as in Giza when they have that little king with the staff. He's either blue or red. And then that boat with people, the people in that boat are planets that came with that sun. And we found in Peru and Giza, it's the same goddamn story. And Graham Hancock here ain't going to tell you that shit, that I don't know how you could miss it. Or Brian Forrester or any of those cats. Um, Same staff, same angles. His shirt, as a matter of fact. I mean, I don't know. You got a long sleeve and a short sleeve V-neck. But in South America, his pants are the short and long V-neck, except it's his tunic. And that shape is exactly the same shape as his magnetosphere because it looks broken. It's got a long end and or short end and a long end on it. And it's like, holy shit! And it's got a little V-neck in it. It's amazing how technically correct they drew Ra, the blue sun. the blue kachina. He isn't a god to be worshipped. And they call him the feathered serpent in Mesoamerica. And it's not a ball game. That big ball between him and his angry red brother, um, that's the planet that's on Ra's head in fucking Giza. Now, most South American folks understand that it's not a ball game. They weren't quite clear on it. That would be Horus, the destroyer for good. He's also known as Herboculus, Vulcan, the Red Kachina. Um, Ra is known as the Dark Star. He's a black light. He changes the way things look in the day. And sometimes in the late afternoon, you're actually going to have two shadows on the cars in front of you traveling north and south on your fucking highway. And you can't see the other sun because the lights are on. The black light. Man, I don't know if you've ever owned one, but I'm telling you right now, man, you can put your eye right up to it and you can't even see the fucking thing is on in the daylight. So that's what kind of sun it is. It's a higher frequency, higher energy sun. And it's also the most common fucking type of sun in the universe, which, like, so it shouldn't be a surprise. It was to me. But that's the blue kachina. It's a blue spectrum, ultraviolet, blue spectrum sun. It's not a theory. Our moon started turning cartwheels in 2010, uh, the same time the polar vortex showed up. Polar vortex being a clockwise rotation on the northern hemisphere. According to the Coriolis effect, you should not have a clockwise rotation on the northern hemisphere. However, as you can look at null school and find quite a few right now. um, there's a lot of scientific evidence in a lot of these people that are trying to tell you the truth ain't looking very hard, or they're being scripted. Um, so that sometimes will include truth with lie, such as NASA taking 11 years to admit that the Earth's axis shifted. Then they blame global warming, cow farts. I was like, they said it started in the 90s, but it didn't. It started in 2010. Now, reading the cuneiform, the Bible canon, you find out that when the sister system nears Earth, the axis shifts, making the sky roll, which is really it's pretty telling. When the sister system nears Earth, the axis shifts, making the sky roll. And it goes on to say that is when the tribulations of Earth began. Later, in one of the other stories we was reading in some of the rocks, it gives you a count of 10.5 years of tribulation before the real shit starts to begin. Well, it's kind of funny. They rolled out the mark of the beast right after tribulations ended, within 6 months. And I named it the Mark of the Beast, and it's named the Mark of the Beast on BitChute. And it tells what I found. There's a few of them on there that you won't find here on YouTube. I had 10,000 people on the other channel over there, and they struck me on the Texas State Meeting of Affairs, a goddamn a Texas Senate meeting, and fucking, I didn't even say a word. I said, well, "Here's the Senate and a doctor talking." That's the only words I said, and it was the Senate of Texas and the doctor talking, and they struck my shit on it, and so on and so forth. So I started putting the good stuff on BitChute because they've not uh, censored uh, most of that. It's all still there. I was warned what to look for, and Constantine knew what they were going to do when he wrote it. No question in my mind. It fits too well for what he described and what they just did and are doing. I also said very much this is the worst part of it. They're going to tell you what they did. They're going to tell you what they did. They're going to blame money and greed and power, but they're already starting to tell you what they did. They're bowling over. They're going to roll over Fauci. They're going to roll him right over Trump and probably Biden too. Um, it seems like they're doing all of that. Exactly what I said they were going to, and um, that's the worst part because that brings on a lot of hurt and anger, not only from citizens here but all over the world. And I'm afraid for people that might think I sound crazy. Yes, it's all scripted. 180 nations under the rule of the Crown Vatican DC Corporation, established 1871. DC Organic Act. That's what we fought the Civil War over. People think that hemp was made illegal because of fucking X, Y, or Z, but it's none of that's true. I've heard every excuse, and it's not. We needed dependency on oil to power the nation, to power your cars, to power the electric, and made it patriotic to murder for oil. And we went across and it, instead of telling mamas, you know, fucking, we're going to go establish 180 nations banks that they don't want with your kids, they would have had less flag waving. I've learned that in my service and the military and fucking looking up contractual, actual, factual as a senator's investigator. And it's all there in black and white. It began with the Treaty of Ghent, Ghent, against Sweden in 1814 with Daniel House. Hi, Daniel. Love you, man. There's a lot of history that people don't really know. It's there. It's documented in the Library of Congress. Um, but they keep it in a different room from the Pokemon, so nobody really looks. See, you're just poking around, aren't you? It's as bad as my kid, Daniel. Doing well, hanging in there, living in dirty, fucking about ready to put this bubbler together. Talking about how I'm not guessing as to what's coming. I'm warning. I'm warning. I'm warning. I'm not prophesizing. Don't fucking think I'm prophesizing either. I was told what to look for. In 2014, if you don't believe me, on my Facebook, go look at it. It's hard to look now, but you got to go all the way down um, and look on both pages. I was talking about Russia, China, and North Korea back then, and telling you because of the Ukraine war, South China Sea, and just because they can. The same words I'm speaking today. All this stuff that's happened, that's never changed because I was told, I was told, I was told, I was offered a fucking bunker for Seamus and I, my son Seamus and I turned it down. I told Kay Davis that I hoped her bunker become her tomb, and they later tried to have an arrest warrant put out on me by the North Carolina state capitol chief of the police, and he refused to do so because it wasn't a threat. I still, to this day, kind of hope her bunker's her tomb if she goes down in it. They need to come clean with what they've done in a real fashion, not just coming clean in a dirty fashion, getting everybody fighting. Because there's going to be a lot of fighting and a lot of hate and a lot of hurt. Just saying.
Continuing on the journey east through the states of France, the ocean like a map.
Good to hear, Danny.
Spectacular features of
I would like to have some of your bread. That's my story. I'm sticking to it, goddamn. They've made my life hell ever since. So I don't care. Yeah, they're going to come clean in the manner that they want you to see, and keep that in mind when you're feeling mad and wanting to turn over cars and shit. Just don't do it. They've look, like I said, I've said it 1,000 times. These immigrants on the border, they've shut down the taps in Mexico a couple months ago. I did a video just on this channel, and their houses have been burning. We've been watching them burn for months. No wonder they're on the border. They're thirsty and they ain't got nowhere to fucking go. They don't want to give our kids fentanyl in school, which is what they're saying. And they're throwing them out as camouflage because they're bringing up. Man, Polly and I saw a damn a Greyhound and a short bus that was being escorted by armored vehicles. That is not moms, dads, and fucking children in a vehicle convoy like that. That's troops being transported, and it's not. They're filling the fucking. They're filling these cities because they want the control mechanism in place before they get everybody burning shit. This isn't on my time scale, but I'm telling you what I'm looking at. And they can't keep this fucking hidden for long because it's a big operation. And I'm watching it happen in real time. As more and more parts of your grocery store are empty, they're messing up the supply chain for everything. So it looks like it's not just the food. And they're doing exactly what I said they would because if people knew how out of food we were, there wouldn't be anything they could do to control it. They'd overrun their bunkers right now if I could take the food because you know where the food's at. Well, after years, some people have stopped thinking I'm a crazy person just because I don't get things wrong and I don't prophesize. I don't care what somebody says, it's not prophecy. All this shit's either math, physics, or I was told by somebody this was coming. Simple as that. I ain't trying to be something I ain't. I promise you. I've been called fucking stupid shit before. And that's not what's going on here. I'm a goddamn whistleblower that hardly anybody fucking listens to. I'm glad people when people do, but I don't want you to believe me either. You need to go look. There's a lot of things you can see that if you look at the right way, start to make sense out of fucking what you're looking at. And people will throw grassy knolls at you, and you sit there and you look at that, and you miss the big shit. The moon's literally doing a cartwheel every night from rise to set. It'll do a 180-degree roll. It's confounding. Isaiah 24:23. When the sister system nears Earth, its axis shifts, making the sky roll. Because we don't roll like that. We roll like this now. That's why your moon's doing cartwheel. If you want to confirm why your magnetosphere is compressed on a clear night, if you're not in the city, look on your north horizon. Look real good. You'll notice there's stars all around except for there. Um, and it's big and it's close. That's another magnet right behind you. Don't worry, it took a couple of years to get that close. Um, it is, it's not hurt anybody. So it's a living being is all I can come up with because it's never crescented once. It's very dark. It's hiding in the shadow. And almost everybody here has looked at it. It's a little humbling. And I do suggest looking at my videos maybe before you go look because it's not supposed to be scary. It's just the way it is. And you are the difference in this situation. That's one thing these people don't want you to know. And I kind of depend on you to open your eyes and look because we all need to be getting back to our original design. And our biology leaves no room for question as to what we can do. And the only question left is the programming that's in your head, and it gets in the way. um, there's been a lot of struggle here in mine with this because I didn't want to believe any of it, and I proved all of it. So you're not only an empath, you're a psychic. You can heal. You're a steward of all life. Um, you have a fucking magnet in your chest. If you don't know magnetic properties, you need to go look it up because you got one, and it's one of the most important things you've ever owned. You feel safe now? Well, safety is a relative term. It's kind of an illusion. It was what in August, early August, they released, or it was just like a few months ago in 22, they released that scientific finding that human beings can manipulate EM fields with the field coming out of their hands. That was a big study they did. And we've been manipulating shit for a while before that. Glenn over here moving shit around with his granddaughter. Well, do yourself a favor one time to a plant, any plant, on a nice still day, so you know it's you. Or you can do one on in the inside. Plants react to your biological field better than anything I've ever seen in my life. And I just started a couple years ago, so don't hold me back. So far, we're still learning. But just take your hand like that and love that plant, and it'll start dancing with you. It'll come at you when you come to it. It's fucking. It bent my fucking brain all around the shit, dude. I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding. These fucking plants can dance, and you can make them dance. And it's all about your EM field. I would like to. Get on one of your marijuana leaves, man. Play with it. Play with it what you feel. Get it in between your hands and watch it dance. There, there's no question in your head after you start fucking playing with your plants and shit. They really, really respond to human interaction. It's amazing. Yeah, and you know when you can feel it in your hands. I don't know if you've seen me do this or not, but somebody in here might not have either. Some people they've been playing with this since they was kids. If you do this, you can feel that pull in your palm, and it starts to get warm. So you pull it apart a little bit, and you feel where it's almost like a bouncy ball. And you can feel it between your fingers. Now, that's just all the time. All the time. It's your magnetic field you're playing with coming out of your hands. And that's your soul force. It's your life force. And when you start getting in the mindset of all magnets are entangled, Creator is a magnet. And Creator designed this. And He knows what frequency can heal us. And you start vibrating that field in a grateful manner, um, you can feel a blockage. You can feel with your fucking hands. They can feel you. Very energetic. Some people get sparks and what they jolts shooting down their legs and stuff. And it's not something that I can do. It's something we can do. All of us can do this, and that's our design because we have a soul, and we have more neurons here than you have up in here, and that's why they're attacking the neurons because these ones contain the emotions and memories, which are key to your frequency. And if you can't control your frequency, you start losing control of your emotions. You're already on your way to madness. You're not going to be able to control. And it does exactly what the mark says it was going to do. It separates you from prayer because you can't come to the right frequency. Now, we, as tools, can wrap some hands around some motherfuckers and let Creator fix that. But that's going to require everybody to start doing it. So, you know, I'm working towards that goal. Now, if you are feeling this, and then reach out to your plant because your emotions have an awful strong sense in your field. And once you start feeling it, it starts knocking out some of that programming, and then you start messing with objects, and they start coming at you, and it's like, oh wow, this is amazing. And then you can play tug of war with a string at will, and with somebody else. It's fucking pretty tight. It's, having a magnet, uh, boy, it's. I've always liked magnets. Now I got one. I got one. It's not only a magnet; it's an EM magnet. I can manipulate fields. Why? Because every atom in existence is a magnet in the center. They call it a muon. We were backed up by science yet again. That's some absurd ass fucking knowledge. That's omnipresence. 1748 hertz. Pretty specific. So, yeah, there's no guessing going on here. And Daniel's pretty smart. He's just a little crazy watching. He's Canadian. But I mean, look, I started telling people there were going to be multiple 5.0s growing to sixes every day. back when there was like a 5.0 every week, about 2014 again, 2015, 16, and it started happening every day. And now we're having 8 or 9 a day. It's the new normal. Wouldn't earthquakes be escalated? Well, they are. They already have. Volcanoes are at record. You know, well above normal. And then you get back. Oh, there's always a record being set somewhere. Yep. I've heard all of that. I've heard how crazy I am so many times a day. It's not even funny. I don't care. I know how crazy I sound. I sound fucking absolutely lunatic, batshit crazy to some people, and I don't blame them. I don't get mad about it. I get upset if they don't want to go look. Because there's, like I said, look in your north horizon at night. You, that's about all it takes. You'd be like, oh, fucking fuck. Okay, so no wonder the moon's doing a cartwheel. Yeah, there's some bad weather going on all over the place.
Furthermore, that 4-kilometer object would itself have been just begun amongst the local fragments.
Tornadoes spawning.
Many of the fragments including some great
Fire tornadoes. I predicted those too. I didn't even know what it looked like. I was shown something I seen. I was like, oh fuck me. That looks like it. It does. Those are becoming prevalent. I just looked yesterday. I ain't looking again today. The goddamn globe's still on fire. I'm like, goddamn. Fucking trees are burning. Yeah, I'd get up off the west coast of the globe. We're tapping brakes, folks. And then waves are going to keep going east when we start slowing down. It's going to be a pretty quick inundation. I don't expect 2 mile high waves like fucking a Hollywood, but it ain't something you're going to outrun once it starts. And we've seen signs of it starting a couple of times over the last couple of months. You got Hawaii out there acting like a wave break. All the fucking waves and the oceans are fucking really high up on the west coast of the globe. And the fucking east coasts are really, really low. It is crazy stuff. I sound insane. We're not motherfucking wrong. That's for sure. Thus reducing solar insulation at high latitudes, increasing snow accumulation. Again, it's not the fear. Creator gave us back the knowledge we need. How do we use it? I don't know. Practicing. Y'all practicing. We get on it. That's all you can do. Baby steps, right? We're doing all right. Not many of you got your vaccines. You still could maintain your shooting pretty well. Trying to reply on the clockwise spin. Yeah, it's very suspect. It's like um, it's simple physics. It shouldn't be there, Daniel. And the only reason it is because we're tilted because of a magnet that tilted us a long fucking ways away. Now it's close, and we're rocking and rolling, bro. It just took a lot longer than I ever expected. The first time I saw the moon upside down was fucking 12 fucking years ago, my friend. Seamus was sick. Freaked me out. I cried. I didn't think, I couldn't imagine why I any God would let there be a baby on the planet when this shit happens. And I learned a whole lot more since then. But, yeah, man, I was completely alone with a little 6-year-old at that point in time. And I knew Robert, my buddy that was in here earlier. And like I said, I got off on that fucking story about the aliens and the Anunnakis. That's the guy that fucking showed me that my dream wasn't a dream. And somebody else drew that shit. I was like, oh fuck. Wait a minute, go back a couple. I had to sit down. He's in shock. Fuck. He's the first person I asked about the moon if they'd seen it. He's also the guy that took that snapshot of the AMA, that green screen with the 1748 hertz on it, because he pays attention. that's who that was. He was like, man, I was sitting in the movie and fucking I said, look what I see. I was like, oh my god, dude. It's on the back of every goddamn AMA movie screen. 1748 hertz. Everything started falling into place. Thank you again, sir, for your contribution to this whole puzzle. Amazing how small the world is, how important friends become sometimes like that. It's like, damn, dude. I'm glad, he wasn't one of the ones calling me crazy. He was actually looking. He was like, bro, I use that picture all the time. You want to see that? It's Derek Rose's fucking shit. Mr. fucking Paramount. I heard yesterday he's around aspen trees. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So am I. you know, if I hadn't been at this with him hounding on my heels for so many years, I wouldn't really wonder. But I wonder. When he starts doing lives from the same state I'm in, it's a little like, okay, dude. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on there. But he took down like 2, 3 years of his content, and then I guess he did a live. I haven't seen it, haven't looked for it. I got an apology from old Caddy, his fucking right hand lady. I haven't got one from him yet. Yeah, no, it shouldn't be there. The Coriolis effect says that. And that's just the simple fucking fact of the matter. The argument's over. There shouldn't be a clockwise swirl toward the hemisphere. And there is. Did they say it's going to make the moon stop rolling? And fucking Orion from rising on his back every damn morning. Because that's only where we're going to get our growing fucking shit right again. Is to right ourselves in orbit, which we're out of. So you're going to get hungry thinking that they're going to help with that. They've been spraying them for 20 fucking years. you know? Um, well, because they're trying to explain off a lot of these things that are happening with cow farts. And they're just pushing that agenda, bro. Look at the electric cars. California banned fucking manufacturing and gasoline cars. All that shit is. But it's all distraction, baby. From they need the herd thinned before people wake up and realize their government is not in control of this situation. They need to thin the herd, Daniel, or all of them, and their bunkers will go down. They need to thin the herds, bro. That's their plan. That's why they're doing this. And there ain't no money in it. They print the money for us, buddy. All this shit's distraction from the reality that they want to fucking control everything. And they think they're going to leave most people up here to die because they've kept their heritage from them. And they're afraid of this time because three suns make a chord, and that hasn't been struck in a really, 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 really long time. They refer to it as the voice of God. They say it resets everything to original design, and I have no reason to doubt it. It makes perfect sense, knowing what we know about frequency. Can't have matter without it. The right frequency heals. I can understand a reset. It's a perfect failsafe in a three sun system, isn't it? The power cord. It just makes so much sense. And I'm like, that just adds to the brilliance of why you can't have DNA without that three strands of energy from three fucking archangels, first creation sons. You can't have life in a single word binary. You have to have the third. It's it's the perfect fucking design for and test all in one great big old wrap. You got to be a symbiotic relationship with fucking nature, or you're just not going to be nature. You know, and it makes sense. I'm like, okay, it's written all over every goddamn rock I've ever seen, and it's in physics. Makes it fits what we're looking at. But I get why they're nervous. Their little bunkers ain't going to help them. Although they're doing all they know to do, it's out of fear. And, the only thing I can do is educate, show people that this isn't time to fear, it's time to act. We're going to do some great acts here. And, it's hard to get people to look sometimes, but it's not a hard job to do. So somebody does. Yeah, some people do, Daniel. Some people got it blocked out though completely. You know, you would do. You get mad at him and say, "Well, no, talk to somebody else." Maybe they're, you know, he keeps telling me I'm coming in and out of service. The Wi-Fi is you can't compress the magnetosphere from inside the magnetosphere. That's just redundant.
For their contribution. The triumphant crowing of critics who clearly believe they have done away once and for all with the hereditary catastrophism of Firestone West and Kennet. Thank God we finally got those bastards. But then a few months later comes the real Younger Dryas comet is born. The ringleaders in the anti-YB comet camp, whose names appear frequently at the top of critical articles, include Mark Boswell at Willow University. In 2012, they teamed up with half a dozen other scientists to publish a paper entitled Arguments and Evidence Against the Younger Dryas Impact Event. And a year earlier, Pinter and some of the paraphrase Mark Twain in their 2012 was that magnetic microspherical abundance results published by the Impact Economy have not been reproducible by other vehicles. Analysis of the same YB site stratigraphy by Laboratory 2009 indicates observations for two of the impact markers published by relative abundance unique studies on two continents that reported finding significant YBB10 abundance. More damaging was the fact that when other scientists repeatedly concluded that the inability of fluid allocation spectroscopy, a necessary procedure clearly specified by Firestone and random spectroscopy, and the third site investigated only by fluid allocation. We found abundant YBB microflows of all three well-anticipated sites, consistent with the results of Firestone research, and conclude that the analytical protocol employed failures, melting and quenching of terrestrial materials, and Martian nearly identical to the indication reported from Kennesaw as part of three studies that reported finding no YBB failures or nanovirus. However, the published universal tree four discontinuous sections. These locations range in distance from the site investigated by Kennesaw by 7,000 meters, 1,600 meters, and 10 meters. Sampling strategy raises questions about whether Pinter, in an effort to limit the size to no such thing, independently unrest and the formidable group of pro-impact scientists launched one of the most comprehensive inhabited areas in Syria and conducted more than 700 analyses on failures using energy-dispersive exploration characterization. The results, published in PNAS on the 4th of 2009, a much more detailed map of the YBB field to be drawn up. covering close to square kilometers of North, Central, and South America. A large segment of the Atlantic also for a major cosmic impact across 50 million square kilometers of several continents, thus precluding local events. Despite the annoying ability of the Younger Dryas 11 requiem is that the pro-impact wishful thinking, even desperation on people's minds, attempted to declare it dead. Secondly, the extensively peer-reviewed proceedings of the National Academy of Science deemed appealing PNAS. It is simply not true to suggest that PNAS is promoting their cause. On the contrary, at the time Pinter blurted out his protest at NBC, the critics of the widely comet hypothesis had published 10 times in PNAS, whereas the proponents' hypothesis is far from over. At the time of writing, the most recent salvo fired by critics of the hypothesis was entitled Anthropogenic Origin of Siliceous Scoria Droplets from Pleistocene and Holocene Archaeological Sites in Northern Syria, or 16 December 2014, and in print in January 2015 in the Journal of Art, composed mostly of glass matrix and bubbles together with scientists as evidence for their case in a building of an ancient site. There is no evidence to suggest that siliceous scoria droplets result from very high temperature level of soil and are the result of a cosmic event. For the Syria site, the impact theory is out, boasted leader for Peter Kai in a press interview headlined "Stout on Mammoth Killing Cosmic Impact." But once again, so I emailed him on the 18th of March. West replied as follows: "We agree with Kai et al. That hut fires can produce fires, as they conclude. We have analyzed natural glasses supplied by one of the authors. Instead, it matches most important mirrors presented in our previous papers on Earth and corundum at around 1,800 degrees Celsius. Now we have even stronger evidence from the Syrian site and are working on a new paper to be published as minerals that melted at extraordinarily high temperatures. No bill can duplicate that range of evidence. Such fires can't produce." The West and his colleagues will publish later in 2015 in repeat the arguments of time. Just as all previous attacks have been successfully refuted. But I also, years ago, will publish yet more so-called requiems for the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis in the years ahead, even while the constant discovery of new evidence may be, I routinely and regularly brush them with conflict and uniformity and established documentation. 21st
How did you
century,
do that?
we have the internet, which allows the very rapid sharing
Exactly.
of
We have
information
the
about
internet.
worlds. That was not the case when Brett began this. It is one case before me on my desk, the latest paper published by Faust and Kenneth West. The paper, entitled Nano-Diamond-Rich Layer Across 3 Continents Consistent with Major Cosmic Impact. The lead author is Charles R. Kinsey of the Department of Chemistry at Ford University, Chicago. Of its authors and of the journal in which it appears, together with the further detailed refutations it contains of prior critiques, combine to make a laughing stock of Nicholas Pinter's claim that the Younger Dryas comet hypothesis is fringe science. Indeed, the contrary is just clearly happening is that an extraordinary hypothesis and has begun to force its way towards. There will be scientists must find hard to dismiss in the climate. His name is Broken, a geochemist and climate scientist at Columbia University's Lamont Tropical Earth Observatory, recently begrudgingly admitted most people were trying to disprove this. Now they're going to have to realize there's some truth to it. But there cannot be just some truth to it. Yep. But the case for the impact is a very strong one. It grows stronger and more convincing to defend their ideas over the years. But rather than doing so here, meanwhile, the September 2014 paper, summarizing the evidence presented, concludes: the cosmic abundances are nanodiamonds, magnetic and glassy spherules, melt glass, platinum, and/or other quantities across at least 4 continents, approaching. Of particular note, adds James Kennedy, is the fact that the glassy and metallic materials in the YDB layers could only have formed other than a massive comet impact. The exact size of that impact remains to be resolved by further research. Until then, says Kennedy, there is no known limit to the YDB stream field. which currently covers more than 10 data recognized in this study, gives scientists a snapshot of a moment in time called an isochrone. Worldwide, to this day, scientists know of only two layers of sediment broadly distributed across several nanodiamonds 65 million years ago, where it has landed a gigantic cosmic impact on both of them. That the impact is thought to have been an asteroid some 10 kilometers in diameter, caused the mass extinction of the dinosaurs. The evidence we present settles the debate about the existence of abundant YBB nanodiamonds, Kenneth says. Our hypothesis challenges some existing paradigms within several disciplines, including impact dynamics, archaeology, paleontology, and paleoceanography, paleoclimatology, all affected by this relatively recent cosmic impact. The point Kenneth makes here has implications for the study and understanding of our past. Archaeologists have been in the habit of regarding cosmic impacts, supposedly only occurring at multi-million-year intervals. When we believed that the last big impact had been a dinosaur-killing asteroid of 65 million years ago, there was obviously little point in trying to relate cosmic accidents on such an almost unimaginable scale in any way to the much shorter time frame of a huge, earth-shaking, extinction-level event occurred just 12,800 years ago. In our historical backyard, changes everything. Chapter 6. Fingerprints of a Comet. Microspheroid strongly towards a cataclysmic encounter between the Earth and a large comet around Younger Dryas. Comet did not occur until after soon exploded in easterly direction across the Atlantic. Still other Middle East in the vicinity of Turkey have been given to the immediate effect. In all cases, the ice searchers have begun a number of possible craters. One can a small circular basin approximately a kilometer in diameter and 19 meters deep. It was studied by a team of scientists led by Troy Holcomb, who concluded that it was likely to be of extraterrestrial impact origin and might have been created in the lake structure in southwestern Nova Scotia. Was identified as a possible impact crater by Ian Spooner, 2009 paper in the journal Meteoritics and Planetary Science. They couldn't be confident as to it of much impact energy into the ice, resulting in the present morphology of the Bloody Creek structure. St. Lawrence, Canada. Discovered by the Canadian Hydrographic Service during underwater mapping, Corosol is in diameter, implying an impacting object with a diameter of up to half a kilometer. The crater presently lies in 40 to 185 meters of water and was originally 70 million. Recent research, however, casts doubt on this chronology. For example, M.D. Higgins and his colleagues from the University of Quebec and the Geological Survey, the crater might be taken to indicate that it is young. The minimum age was established using data from a 7-meter core, taken in the estimate of the age of the base of the sedimentary sequence of around 12,900 years ago. This is taken to be the youngest possible age of the impact. That youngest possible age of 12,900 years is comfortably within the margin of error of 12,800 years, plus or minus 150 years, that is presently accepted for the Younger Dryas boundary. In other words, if the impact crater of Firestone, Kenneth West, and other pro-impact scientists, the prominent crater the microspherules found near the throwing ejector high into the atmosphere. The ejector included spherules in the range of 2 to 5 millimeters in diameter that were centigrade. Growth texture, mineralogy, and the age of 900 years ago. The rare earth element patterns and the SR and ND isotopes of the spherules indicate that their source lies on the Quebecia terrain. From the apparent northwest to southeast trajectory of the Younger Dryas comet, the birth from the Bloody Creek structure in Nova Scotia might mark the impacts of the last two. It is to these we should look for the possible source of the meltwater for Breckley's flood. As the source of the spectre. It's important. Shaw argues that the volume of water in Lake Missoula field, his own field, is the huge 100,000 cubic kilometers, were impounded in a subglacial reservoir, north proposed by Shaw of Scablands. Likewise, Victor Baker, professor of hydrology and water resources at the University of Colossal Joculates, advocated. The position that diverted attention from some of the outstanding problems that regular features of the Camel scablands. In 19 available fact by the midnight caused by outburst floods in Lake Missoula, Hunt's dissatisfaction stemmed from his own extensive knowledge of dams and how to design them to take best advantage of local geology. The bottom line, according to his report, ice dam broke, covered an area of about 3,000 square miles and contained an estimated 500 cubic miles, 2,084 cubic kilometers, buried in altitude terrain meant the glacial lake would have been. While broadly concurring with the U.S. Geological Survey's figures, C. Warren Hunt emphatically water to a depth of 2,100 feet. When one considers, he wrote, that modern engineering employs bedrock grouting for securing it must surely strike any reader and then reach 4 times the pressure of modern engineered dams. Hunt's incredulity at the notion of an ice dam more than 2,000 feet high and 7 miles long receives support from once formed, this hole will enlarge by frictional melt widening. Hunt accepted the USGS statistics. The surface of Lake Missoula Valley between the Bitterroot and Cabinet mountain ranges. That it did so is confirmed by an ancient strand line at that altitude, and other strand was to provide a source, the nature of which is beyond the competence of the writer, must have resulted in a tide rising to 5,000 feet, 1,600 meters, above present sea level. The waters were held there, surging, partial floating of glaciers, sweeping of the canyons, removal of past floors, and discharge of boulders in a single gigantic flood as the source of all the damage on the Columbia Plateau. His 1977 notion that it was a tidal inundation of seawater rushing up estuaries and brought on environment of violence. Conceding that the tidewater solution is weakened by the great distance to tidewater and the absence of a trail of evidence along the possible routes, he sought out other possible. Why would the water not have lifted the periphery of the ice sheet and emerged without accumulating soon after it was produced by Hunt reasoned that there was not. Besides, the 100,000 cubic kilometers that shores the with a tidal source, glacial lake, and some researchers now believe they were cut by glacial meltwater at extreme pressure in America. There is a spectacular floods emanating randomly. You could spend a lifetime, he tells me, traveling this land in Pennsylvania and western New York and in New England. All the Canadian provinces preserve large-scale evidence of gigantic water flows. All regions within or proximal to the area of the last great glaciation show the effects of intense, mega-scale floods. But the question that remains concerns the source of these floods. Gradualist science as elevating it and its epic joculauts to serve as the sole explanation for all the astonishing diluvial features of the channeled scablands of the Columbia Plateau. It is not surprising, therefore, that other Ice Age floods, wherever they're admitted to have occurred, are also attributed to joculauts from glacial lakes. More than that, it is the floodwaters from these glacial lakes, rather than anything so vulgarly catastrophist as a comet, that are presently regarded by mainstream glacial lake Agassiz, which lay across most of Manitoba, northwestern Ontario, around as great as 440,000 square kilometers, 170,000 square miles, when an ice dam broke and allowed a substantial fraction of its contents, perhaps as on a flood path running through the Mackenzie River system in the Canadian Arctic coastal plain and thence into the Arctic Ocean. There, the anticyclonic circulation of a current known as the Beaufort Gyre would have gradually moved it onwards into the subpolar North Atlantic and the transpolar drift. The slow release, a short duration, high discharge into a significantly longer, more moderated and sustained meltwater rerouting event to the North Atlantic. What made matters worse, however, was that at the same time, huge quantities of icy meltwater were also being dumped into the North Atlantic from the other glacial lakes and directly off the Laurentide ice sheet itself. The combined effect, so the theory goes, disrupted ocean circulation to such an extent that it radically affected global climate. A great gush of cold fresh water derived from the melting Laurentide ice across the surface of the North Atlantic. It prevented warm, salty water from the Southern Ocean flowing deep beneath the surface, the Gulf Stream, from rising to the surface, The normal overturning of the ocean water stopped. As a consequence, the atmosphere over the ocean, America. These are here. In brief, though, the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, also known as the thermohaline circulation, is the great ocean conveyor belt that not only carries warm water to the surface and it eventually cools and sinks off the coasts of Greenland and Norway, but also carries the resultant cold North Atlantic deep water south, returning it slowly to the equator, where it mixes with warmer water, rises again to the surface, and thus continues the cycle. It transports large amounts of water, heat, salt, carbon, nutrients, and other substances around the globe, and connects the surface ocean and atmosphere with the huge reservoir of the deep sea. As such, it is of critical importance to the global climate system. It was the shutting down of this delicately balanced, intricately interconnected, hugely complex, critical cycle, scientists agree, that caused the dramatic global cooling of the Younger Dryas. That the shutdown was the result of colossal meltwater floods out of glacial lakes and directly off the Laurentide ice cap is also agreed. J. Fidel points out in a keynote paper in the journal Quaternary International is why this should have happened 12,800 years ago, rather than say 800 or 1,000 years earlier, at the height of the warm phase, known as the falling Alarod interstadial, that immediately preceded floods should have been at their peak during the warming phase. In reality, the solution to the mystery seems transparently obvious to Richard Firestone, Alan West, Jim Kennett, and other proponents of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Quite simply, there is no mystery. In their reckoning, the huge meltwater floods that so radically affected global climate were caused by multiple large fragments of a comet ripping through the Earth's atmosphere and smashing down into the ice cap. Not just one fragment of half a kilometer or so as envisaged by Seymour and Hunt, but as many as 8 fragments more, including some that might have been as much as 2 kilometers in diameter. The colossal heat generated by such impacts, with a combined explosive power estimated as we've seen at 10 million megatons, provides all the energy needed to set off a truly cataclysmic meltdown of huge sectors of the North American ice cap. The gigantic flood that would have followed, after scouring the land in its path, would indeed have entered the oceans as a great gush of fresh water and provided the shock to the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation that kept global climate savagely cold for the next 1,200 years. The situation would have been sunlight for an extended period of time, which would of course have had the effect of lowering temperatures even further. Moreover, the impact events, followed by extensive fires and sudden climate change, likely contributed together to the rapid extinction of the megafauna and many other animals. The reader will recall that no less than 4, by definition, looking for an extinction mechanism that is capable of wiping out up to 35 genera across a continent in a geologic instant. Nor is it just North America that we must consider, for most of the diverse megafauna of South America that had flourished before the Younger Dryas also suffered extinction by 12,000 years ago, in other words, before the Younger Dryas came to an end. Could it have been overkill by human hunters? Did human beings first arrive in the Americas? Whatever the answer, it seems implausible that bands of nomadic hunter-gatherers, many animals, including giants like the Columbian mammoth, in so short a time, across 2 continents. Moreover, there is much less during the Younger Dryas that would have further reduced their motivation and efficiency. Archaeological evidence from South America is limited, but in North America, abruptly vanished from the record. Indeed, all available indicators point to a significant decline and or reorganization in human population during the early centuries of the Younger Dryas. Once again, therefore, the only explanation that makes complete sense of the evidence is the comet impact hypothesis of Firestone, Kennett, West, and their large group of colleagues in Philadelphia. In the light of their findings, which we've reviewed extensively in the preceding chapter, 1. There was indeed cataclysmic flooding in North America at the end of the Ice Age. 2. It was not primarily spontaneous meltdown of a large area of the ice cap. 3. The heat source needed to initiate this meltdown came from the kinetic North America 12. North America, while appeared to have smashed into the European ice cap. In this connection, it may be of relevance that recent high-resolution sonar scans of the English Channel, the floor of which was above water during the Ice Age, have revealed evidence of cataclysmic flooding there, in the form of a 400-kilometer-long network of submerged and partially infilled valleys carved into the bedrock. The data show a collection of landforms that, taken together, indicate a catastrophic flood origin, state the authors of a study published in Nature. The study specifically likens these now submerged landforms to the Cheney-Pelouse terrain of the channeled scabland of Washington, USA. The authors state that they cannot resolve the absolute timing of the flooding events. They do conclude, however, that their study provides the first direct evidence that a mega-flood event was responsible for carving the English Channel Valley network. Our observation airbursts in North America, right across the Atlantic Ocean and across Europe, was the final rain of fragments falling as far afield as the Middle East. 6. The combined effect of these multiple impacts, particularly the immense pressure event, itself a catastrophic species, impressed humanity very hard. 7. The human costs of the disaster might not have been confined to the complete but an advanced civilization, now lost to history, might also have been obliterated. Spring is coming. What is particularly striking is that the very radical climate changes at both the comet impact hypothesis makes the best sense of this. We have lofted sufficient ejecta into the atmosphere 12,800 years ago to plunge the Earth into a long, sustained twilight, akin to a nuclear winter, the time of darkness that so many ancient myths speak of, capable of reducing solar radiation for more than 1,000 years. The dramatic warming that began 11,600 years ago would then be explained by the final dissipation of the ejecta cloud, coupled with an end. Another possibility, not necessarily mutually contradictory with any Dryas to start 12,800 years ago. On the second occasion, however, analysis suggests that the primary impacts were not on land or onto ice, but into the world's oceans, throwing up vast plumes of water vapor and creating a greenhouse effect that caused global warming rather than global cooling. According to renowned British astronomers, the difference between a warm ocean and a cold one amounts to a 10-year supply of sunlight. Thus, the warm conditions produced by a strong greenhouse must be maintained for at least a decade in order to produce the required transformation of the ocean. And this is just about the time for which the needed amount of water is so vast, 100 million tons, that only one kind of causative event seems possible. More research certainly needs to be done to establish the exact mechanisms in all their complexity that brought about the sudden end of the Younger Dryas. Ice cores, those invaluable windows into the climate in the North Atlantic region, turned into a milder and less stormy regime as a consequence of a rapid retreat of sea ice cover. A warming of 7 degrees centigrade was completed in about 50. Laris, Pinus Cembra, and Betula suddenly began to proliferate, and a great global spring had begun. Such is the rebirth of the cosmos as in circulation. The source of the flood was the North American ice cap. Since the previous 2 millennia had witnessed continuous sea level rise, the resolution of the data means there's no way of knowing exactly how much coastal land was swallowed up by this singular event. With so much new water that had previously been locked in ice abruptly added, however, we may surmise that a dramatic and instantaneous rise in sea level did occur. In the same geological instant that the melt improved to such an extent that they were warmer and wetter than they are today, to a savage and icy global winter. Again, the resolution of the data does not allow us to say exactly how soon after the meltwater flood the deep freeze began, but as we saw in the previous chapter, there is much to suggest that it was achieved within the span of a single human generation, around 11,000 so. Again, with a margin of error of 150 years in either direction imposed by the data, but again, apparently within a single generation. The freeze suddenly ended, global temperatures soared, and the remnant ice caps collapsed, shedding their residual water burden into the world's oceans, which rose dramatically to close to today's level. Our ancestors passed through this to one another. Their stories and eyewitness accounts would in turn have become part of the from chapter 3. Certain Native American myths do absolutely seem at the end of the last ice age. The terrible floods that scoured and ravaged the land are described in detail, but of even greater once, thousands of years ago, that burnt up everything and that made a different world, margins of error, to around 12,800 years ago. We've seen how scientists Richard Firestone, Alan West, Jim Kennett and others believe that touching 2 kilometers hit the North American ice cap, generating huge amounts of heat and instantly transforming great masses of ice into the floods of meltwater that disrupted oceanic circulation and played a key role other down on even more distant lands as far away as the Middle East. Thus, though the epicenter was in North America, it's not surprising that the Younger Dryas was a global event that affected peoples and cultures all around the world. What is surprising is the remarkable consistency with which traditions from every part of the globe speak not only of cataclysmic or humans in advance of warnings preserved in the Middle East. At the furthest, that the strewn field of comet debris is confined to the 50 million square kilometers presently recognized. It simply means that samples of sediment from other regions have been assayed for nanodiamonds, magnetic and glassy spherules. Research so far done, however, the site furthest from North America that has produced firm evidence of the presence and just before completion of the Takba Dam on the Euphrates River caused it to disappear forever beneath the advancing waters of Lake Assad. Sediment samples from the Archaeological boundary layer of one of these samples from Trench E dated to 12,800 years ago, that Firestone West, Kennett and their team assayed in 2012. As we saw in Chapter 5, they found nanodiamonds, abundant cosmic impact spherules, and melt glass that could only have formed at temperatures in excess of 2,200 degrees Celsius, suggesting that the site was near the center of a high-energy airburst impact under Lake Assad. Of note is the fact that the site lies close to Persia, a pre-Islamic religious order, since even the lifetime of its prophet Zarathustra, more usually known as Zoroaster, is uncertain. Indeed, as colloquial as the Greek historians were amongst the 5,000 years before the Trojan War, itself a matter of uncertain historicity, but generally put at around. A similar chronology is given by Diogenes Laertius, who relates that Zoroaster lived 6,000 years before Xerxes' Greek campaign, in other words, around 6,480 BC, and 50 BC, and 258 years before Alexander, in other words, around 588 BC. Whatever the truth of the matter, it's agreed that Zoroaster himself borrowed from much earlier traditions, and that Zoroastrianism, therefore, like many other religions, has root scriptures known as the very ancient oral traditions. The verses speak of a primordial father figure called Yima, the first man, the first king and the founder of civilization, and appear in the opening section of the first land, good river Daicha, as a paradise on earth, and how the fair Yima, the great shepherd, was the first mortal with whom Ahura Mazda chose to converse, instructing him to become a preacher. Yima refused, at which the god set him a different task. Since thou wantest not to be the preacher and the bearer of my law, then make my world thrive, increase, undertake thou to nourish, to rule, and to watch over my world. To this Yima agreed, at which the god presented him with a golden ring and a poniard, a long tapered thrusting knife inlaid with gold. Significantly, for we will see in chapter 17 there are close parallels to this story as far away as the Andes Mountains of South America, Yima then made the earth grow larger by 1/3 than it was before, a feat that over the course of thousands of years he repeated twice more, in the process eventually doubling it unto him at his will and wish as many as he. Anatomically modern humans like ourselves have existed, so far as we know, for a little less than 200,000 years. The earliest outcome of the modern human skeleton acknowledged by science is from Ethiopia and dates to 196,000 years ago. Within this time span, there has been only one period when those parts of the earth that are useful to humans increased dramatically in size, and that was during the last previously submerged land totaling 27 exposed by lowered sea levels at the last glacial maximum 21,000 years ago. Useful land. Of which a great part was still above water at the beginning of the Younger Dryas. It has anything to do with the golden age that Yima's benign rule supposedly achieved in Ariana Vallejo. It is interesting to note what happened next. After another immense span of time, we read, Yima was summoned to a meeting place by the good river Daicha, where the god Ahura Mazda appeared to him and catastrophic climate change. A fierce, foul frost. Upon the material world, the fatal winters are going to fall, that shall make snowflakes fall thick, even on the highest tops of mountains. Therefore make the Avara, a hypogeum or underground enclosure, long as a riding ground on every side of the square, and thither bring the seeds of sheep and oxen, of men, of dogs, and of the greatest, best, and finest kinds on this earth. Thither shalt thou bring the seeds of every kind of tree, of the greatest, best, and finest kinds on this earth. Thither shalt thou bring the seeds of every kind of fruit, the fullest of food, and the sweetest of odor. All those seeds shalt thou, no humpbacked, none bulged forward there, impotent, no lunatic, no leprous. That was Ariana Vallejo, a winter at the onset of which, as the Bundahish, another Zoroastrian text informs us, the evil spirit sprang like a snake out of the sky down to the earth. And then the middle of this earth, he rushed out upon the whole creation, and he made the world quite as injured and dark at midday as though it were dark night.